So I think
And if they don't, shame
we're
on them.
live. Hey.
Hey, hey.
That was it. That's all we get. Although I will say, obviously we just go live. It's not like there are 10 people that were just like waiting for it and they're all here yet.
All right, don't say that. We have hundreds of people
we
waiting.
thousands.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Thousands of people.
Right.
Thousands of people.
It's all about the illusion. You don't give it away. Come on.
Yeah, come on.
Of course. So yeah, we can just keep chatting. As soon as people actually start showing up, we can do a quick little intro. I have a fun blooper reel, Matta, because I did not know how to pronounce your name when I was trying to make my Kickstarter video, and I have like 4 or 5 outtakes that I've strung together. Every time I was talking about the cover, I was like, fuck, I still don't know how to say her name. And I keep forgetting to ask. So we're going to play that as soon as we have a little bit of an audience. Nice. And that'll be your intro. And then you can tell me how to actually say your name.
All right.
That sounds awesome.
But for you see my blooper reel, so
exactly.
Like a light caught fire in my blooper reel. It was a whole thing.
Nice. It is like F-bombs galore. It's like the ultimate F-bomb reel. Funnily, I did not curse like at all in my blooper reel. I thought I would, but it didn't happen. What I did have though is like very specific bloopers. I couldn't say Ron's name, the creator of Armageddon Quest.
Oh my God.
I was like Lon, and I'm like, Jesus, where's my R's today? And I just like I couldn't get his name out of my mouth. I didn't know how to pronounce your name. There were a couple other really fun ones, but like no cursing. I would just like, and many times I would just lose my train of thought, and I'd be like, so we are offering
stuff. Lots of things.
And it would just be this longest pregnant pause. And I'm like, it's not exciting. I just can't remember what we're offering. That wasn't a drum roll, please.
Like in addition to physical books, I have like the F do I have again? I don't know.
Right. It's like I'm offering a comic. Everything beyond that, I'm like, I don't remember this shit. I pulled it out of my butt to begin with. I don't remember what all these things I put together.
Oh, my favorite blooper word is like anytime I say physical, I can't even say it. Physical and digital. I always go digital.
Like, that's digital.
It's like,
there you go.
We have digital rewards. Like, no, brain, stop it, please.
It's funny. Blake is saying he always forgets how to say your name too.
And when you make him say it and like putting the pressure on him, and he's just like, "Why are you doing this to me?"
Well, it's funny because I told him, I'm like, I'm not sure if it's this way or that way, and he's like, "Oh, it's this way." Then he paused and he's like, "Oh wait, no, she said it rhymed with sorcerer, so maybe that's wrong now." And I was like, "Yeah, what you just said was the opposite of that." So no one fucking really knows.
It's funny because I say it in my Kickstarter video, but nobody ever watches it. So. Womp womp.
Exactly.
The answer was under your nose the whole time.
Exactly. I never watched the Kickstarter videos, so I don't know. I know. I'm like,
who's got time for that? There's so many campaigns.
Right. And when you read, like, I don't know, I'm a reader. I think my brain is wired. It's if I'm on TikTok or YouTube or something, sure, whatever. But it's funny. I think I'm one of the few assholes who actually reads the description of every YouTube video, and I
prefer the descriptions. Yeah,
I do too.
Yeah. And because I'm like, there's links down there. I'm like, well, if I do watch this and I'm interested, is this easy? Like, can I find shit about it? Can I find more information? And when I go down there and there's like no information, I'm like, really? So I'm going to watch a video, get intrigued. And then, I've got to go
especially when it's like a 15-minute video. Like I've definitely done that with like art supply reviews and stuff where they're just like, like dinking around for like 15 minutes. And it's just like, I just want to know if it's good. Does the description say it's good? And then I look at the comments, and if the comments say it's good, I'm like, okay, this is good. I don't need to watch this for 15 minutes. It's also hard when you have like auditory processing disorder like I do. Like I need to kind of like either see captions or like see people's mouths moving when they talk. Otherwise, it's like if someone's doing like a YouTube video and they're talking about something, but I don't see the person talking and they're just like, oh, I'm just painting or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea what these people are saying. Like, you did what with a mackerel? Like,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I think with the videos, I started to put a lot of time into mine, and then I realized I never watched the videos, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I slaving for hours over this thing? And I think if you're a tech product or something like that, where you've got like a demonstration and you're showing people how it freaking works, like that's a lot more important than the pictures down below. But books, comics, like if you're an actual movie, right? You have like a whatchamacallit reel, Oh, damn it, Dallas. What a demo reel, or what's the atmosphere reel? What do they always call those things when you're like doing it to show like the flavor
Sizzle
of
reel.
the piece?
It's real.
Sizzle reel.
Concept,
Thank
sizzle
you.
reel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Concept sizzle reel. God,
Yeah.
I'm in this business. I'm like, wow, I can't. Yeah. My
Also,
brain's
my
on
heat's
comics
coming
these
up and making noise. So if you hear a knocking sound, it's not violence. It's just the heat.
Nope. We can't
the
hear.
minions trapped in the basement, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm the one trapped in the basement, actually. It's good that it's not picking that up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. StreamYard, there's a little like background cancellation thing you can check, and it's amazing. It is like seriously magical in how it can do it. Where the voices are clear as day, and like I've got an AC unit right above my head, and like I'm blowing it all summer, and you never hear it.
Amazing.
In these videos.
I love that StreamYard does pick up like Pumpkin's meows, like when he gets really hungry and he starts going like, meow, and he's like all the way in the other room, like everyone else is like, oh, the cat.
Sounded like that sounded like an animal sound. Maybe that's important, you know, rather than like a machine. Yeah. It's like maybe you want people to hear your cats, right? Maybe that's why. I mean, that's YouTube videos. It's like
that's how you get views,
your cat.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're streaming your cat. Why would you not stream your cat?
We stream cats. If I could stream my cats more than I could stream my comics, I think I'd have a lot more followers.
Oh my goodness. All right, so we're gonna do a quick little official intro now that we're a few minutes in. So we have with us today special guest. You're gonna hear me attempt this a couple of times, and then we're gonna come back and she's gonna reveal how to actually say it. But this was me attempting.
Or maybe she won't.
Oh, maybe I won't. Maybe I'm just gonna like mess around with you.
There you go.
We'll take a poll at the end.
These are outtakes from my own Kickstarter video because Matta was so kind to do colors on the main cover for this Kickstarter. But here is me realizing I never figured out how to say her last name. With us here today is Armageddon Quest, Book 1, new logo by Reed Hinckley Barnes, colors by Matta Sorcier. That's actually a good question, right? New colors by Matta Sorcier. Matta Sorcier or Sorcier? I actually don't know. I'll have to ask her. Oops. So we have Armageddon Quest, Book 1, Tazio. Brand new logo by Reed Hinckley Barnes. And this original line work was done in 1984 by Ron Roach, the original creator, and brand new colors and a little touch up on the art by Matta Sorcier or Sorcier. I actually don't know. I should have asked. But Sacrimony's creator, Matta M. Sorcier. You know who I'm talking about. It's down below. Just read it. We have a brand new logo by Reed Hinckley Barnes, new colors on the cover by Matta Sorcier or Sorcier. Who knows?
You had it, and then you corrected yourself to be incorrect.
Which one? All of them?
Sorcier.
You
had it, and you said Sorcier, and then you're like, or is it Sorcier?
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't know. I've never known. Who knows? No one knows. Seriously,
the 10
no
people
one living
watch my Kickstarter videos know.
Yeah, they know now.
This is true. It's like
I got like 10 video plays.
I have the analytics, exactly. It's like I know 10 people have watched. And were they paying attention when they played it? There's the other question.
Probably not. I don't know who watched it till completion. I think it was 10 people who watched it until completion, and like probably a few people watched the first few seconds. But I said my name then. But
Sorcier.
Well, there it is. Sorcier. So you were right, Blake. It does not rhyme with sorcerer. You were correct the first time as well, and then he corrected himself.
Whoa, Blake was correct about my name for once?
The first time.
Okay.
The first time. Yeah, which is so of course he had to like throw it out and be like, no. I can't trust whatever I do the first time.
Oh my god.
Which is actually the way I feel.
Yeah, second guessing himself always. It's what we all
do.
When I always feel like I'm like Sorcier, and then I'm like, oh, that's pretentious. That can't be right.
Oh, you know what's funny? I actually just learned from a friend in Italy that Matta is actually Italian for Madwoman. I'm like, yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of Madwoman and Sacrimony, which is
Good
what we're here
segue.
to talk about. Yeah, because you have to be a mad woman to do this. And look, guys, so we're here to discuss Volume 1, trade paperback of Sacrimony. This collects the first 5 issues of the comic with all sorts of. I've got all these little. Damn it! I have all these extra things in there.
Aw, chock full of stuff.
I have to. They were my bookmark while I was reading them, so I kept them in there. But
Nice.
you know, to do well. I mean, look at the bloody cover. I mean, look at the line work. Look at the detail. Look at everything in this. We got Matta. They got nada.
I love John.
So you've got, I mean, just this glorious artwork. And this is a fun fact. Most people know this, but kind of a fun fact is that Matta did pretty much everything that's in this first volume, just about, I believe.
Yeah.
Once. And then as a webcomic, scrapped the whole thing and started over from the beginning again.
I think I have my old copy here.
What sort of demons were you working out? God.
Too many.
And
like
too
you
many,
want names, you
better.
want like locations, like we might need a couple hours. But yeah.
So we know the story. We're not going to go too much in detail on that because I know lots of people who have seen you on shows. That's the original. Oh my god!
Yeah,
and that is
crazy.
Those are available. Are those available as add-ons or anything? Or not officially. Like we have to like nudge you for it.
I made a small run and like that was it. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm gonna like do a better version. There's also a trade paperback for like chapter 2 as well that I had done. So like this was like the chapter 2, which is like issues. Oh my god, I can't math. 6 through 10. Okay, so I had gotten like 250 pages into the story before I was like, I need to start over the first section of it because like the art was rough and the writing was really rough because I was kind of like I knew where I wanted things to go, but also like I was winging it, so there wasn't a lot of like cohesion. I was like, no, that's bad. I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And you can't like stand there and tell every new reader like I promise it gets better and it makes sense later on. So first impressions matter.
That's true.
Well, and I know, you know, we always get better the more we do things. So it's like you're always going to feel like something that's years old doesn't hold up to what you're doing now. Yeah. Or vice versa sometimes. And, you know, like what you're doing now, you're like, oh, I was so much better like back then. What happened to me?
I've had that moment with like my art from 2008 where I was like, oh man, that was like my peak of peakness. And then like I went through some things I didn't draw for like 5 years, and then I picked it up again in like 2013, and I was like, how to pencil? Yeah. Like how does the neck connect to the head? How does the shoulder connect to the neck? I don't know what's going on anymore.
You're like, doesn't matter. We'll just make someone headless, and that fixes my problem.
You know, you'd be surprised how many headless people I've drawn back then.
Well, I was gonna say you went there in I haven't actually read issue 6 yet, but I flipped through it and I've seen some of the pages.
Yes, but, you've seen some headlessness.
Yeah, I've seen some headlessness on that, so I feel like that's where we're going. Brave choice.
Great choice.
My first story holds up to my current. They are all terrible and getting worse.
Shut your liar mouth, John. Shut your liar mouth.
So what's your, if you know off the top of your head, or, you know, if you think about it for a couple minutes, what's your proudest moment in terms of the redo? Like, what's the page or moment or couple of pages where you're just like, I like, compared to where I was, now I do, like, you even feel like you're fucking amazing, you know, for this moment and how far you came. So can't say you don't have the
answer to that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it's actually in, oh man, what would it be? Issue 4, where you're kind of introduced to what I call the B team, which is like, you know, we've got like Ravana and Angelo and Felix, and they're doing their thing, and they're gonna go and retrieve Sifrim from his icy prison. And the way that I wrote it before, like, you know, in the before 4 times, it was a total mess. Like, we were never really introduced to like who these characters are, like why we should care about them. They just came in, they did a thing, they nuked a bunch of old ladies, and they left. And we, yeah, it was like, curious, so like, people were like, what's the deal with this? Like, I don't like these people. And I was like, oh no, but these are actually like nice people. We should like them. So and it's part of me also not planning as far ahead as I wanted to, because like originally they were supposed to be sort of like villain characters, but then I was like working through the story, and then I was like, wait, no, I don't want them to be like villains. I want them to be like, the few nice people in the story who are like genuinely wanting like nice things.
Yeah.
So
Now-
yeah,
now-
those guys.
Now, was there
Yep.
anything in the original that you needed to keep, wanted to keep, or thought you did better in the original rather than the second?
Oh man. That's a good question. I think definitely in the redo there were scenes where I was like, don't fix what's not broken. So like
Mm.
the art needed touching up, but like everything else I could just like have it as is.
Okay.
Like the dialogue didn't need to change, the whole scene didn't need to change. It was just like, all right, I can just like make this line art a little better and like call it a day. That
Yeah.
that especially happened in issue 6, which Dave only skimmed through. But yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of that was mostly the old art, like especially the environmental effects was like the old art from 2017, 2018 or whatever. And like I just had to redraw the characters and like slap them on there. And I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Well.
And that is this scene essentially when they're coming to this little area. These are the little short ones are the old ladies, quote unquote.
Yes.
Yes. And I have to admit, this is one where I've never read the OG version of this, but here there's a lot more like you can see them trying desperately for diplomacy and like trying to be nice people, even though their job isn't easy and you're not sure exactly of the politics involved here. Like they drop a few hints and a few things from the past of why these two groups hate each other and why the diplomacy now is so strained. But
that's explained in the field guide, by the way.
Which I also haven't read yet, but I have it. So we're gonna. So yeah, we've got the two things. Yeah, you've got issue 6, which I got the foil, or this is just a foil, not a metal cover.
It's a foil.
Right? Yeah, foil. So I got the foil cover for that one. Absolutely beautiful. I decided to reread all of volume 1 before I jumped into this. So I haven't jumped into this yet. And now that number 7's happening, I'm kind of like, maybe I'll wait for number 7 before I read number 6.
I mean, honestly, if you reread volume 1, that in itself is like, okay, I'm going to reread like 184 pages. So like, okay, I can't be too mad at you.
And the field guide, I do get the feeling, even though I've only skimmed through the field guide, but there's a lot of things. What would you say field guide wise? Certainly there's nothing in the field guide, or there's nothing in the reading the story. I don't feel like you need a field guide to like understand the story or follow what's happening, but there is a lot of information in the field guide. Like the story does not stop to really explain itself too much. Like that is something that it's very good about, dropping only what you need, and all the details that are happening around these characters are just sort of like, maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, but it's fine. It's fine. We're just gonna, here's the human drama that's happening between these characters. Just enough information so you have some context as to why they're having this conversation. That's it. Like their culture, the place they're at. Like, I mean, there is a lot that is not explained in that world building way, even though plainly there's a lot of world building that you've done to put that all in place. Would you say the field guide has a lot of that information and you don't try to bog the story down, or like how do you approach that world building element of all of this?
Oh man, so I approach things in the way that I like to, like, oh man, how do I explain it? I guess I think about the things that I don't like what other stories do, and I try not to do that. Like, when you open up that fantasy book and there's like 4 pages of just straight text where it's like, this is the world, blah, blah, blah. These guys were fighting those guys. That guy was doing this. This guy was on the toilet at this time, blah, 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 whatever. And you're just like my eyes glaze over and I just like fast forward through all of that, because it's like, I don't know who these people are. I don't have any context for them. I'm not going to remember the names. I'm not going to remember what they've done unless like I see them do a thing. So
Right.
I approach Sacrimony in the same way. I put the character first. I let you know who the character is, what the character is about. And then if you're curious, it's like, okay, so like what are these guys like what is the Pope's beef with like these little blue people or vice versa or whatever? Like then you can see it in the field guide because then you have this other thing to refer to. Then you're like,
Right.
oh, that's the thing. This is why this happens. But like in the story itself, you still get like a little snippet of like, okay, this is why they hate them because like they colonized them and did this and that. And like, you know, this nice guy is trying to extend the olive branch and be like, hey, I'm sorry for what my predecessors did. And like, I'm
Right.
not like them. And they're like, you're just
Right.
a dirty liar. And then,
Right.
you know, you read the field
And of
guide and
course,
you,
he's a representative, but then there is always that wonder. Like, then there's the government, the ruling class, or whatever it is of that guy's group. And it's like, are they on the same page as you? I mean, they sent you to win us over, but are they really as nice as you? And that's always a concern when it's like groups of people trying to, yeah.
yeah, especially when you find out like what they're about. I think they were in issue 5, the council, and they're kind of just
Right.
talking about him behind his back, and it's like, you know, he probably found nothing. He's an idiot. Whatever. We run the show.
Right.
He's just a figurehead.
Right.
So you kind of start
Well,
to
I mean, that's
suspect.
basically why they have to like kind of abscond with the guy they came for. In its way. I mean, they're I guess that's the thing. Is sort of like he's in a rock and between, well, because he is a rock and a hard place with his. He's like, we can't leave without this guy.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what. That's so we're being nice, but at the same time, if they really don't let us take him, if we can't convince them one way or the other, we're just gonna have to take him. And it's so there is that thing where it's like you say all the nice things that you say, but at the end of the day, you're just gonna do what the fuck you want,
Yeah, I
regardless.
mean, he
of
feels really bad about it. It wasn't
Right.
his call. He was just gonna stand there and like, you know, make his little shield like an idiot the whole time and still try to
Right.
talk to them. And then Felix is like, you know what, you guys are idiots. Let me just solve this for you. Here, I killed 2 of your queens. Like, give me the guy. And
Yep.
like that's his thing. Is like he's used to being the bad guy, so he's like, all right, if you guys want to look like the nice guy, I'll be the bad guy. I'll do the dirty work, and then you guys can walk away with this guy.
So let's roll back for the people who are unfamiliar. What was your on-ramp into the story? What's the genesis of the idea? What was the kernel? Where did we get the kind of fuel for this world from?
Which, by the way, Dallas is unfamiliar, so we should probably ask these questions for him. I haven't given him all the personal history of the series. He's just read it at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of history behind it. I mean, I came up with the idea probably when I was like 12 or 13 years old, like back in middle school when I didn't want to pay attention to what the teacher was saying. Like, I'm just going to draw instead or like write some stuff instead. But it came from the idea that like my parents are immigrants to this country. They came in, they were like very xenophobic or like, you know, I would just say racist because it's like they would tell me like, you know, don't talk to these people are bad. Don't talk to those people are bad. Like basically anyone who didn't look like us was like a bad person. Because you know, that's what's gonna happen. So then, you know, me being the rebellious kid I was like, no, I'm just gonna make friends with everyone. Like everyone seems so cool. I don't see like what's so bad about these people that like I couldn't get it. Like it made no sense. So like that's kind of where I came up with the idea of Kajad, where she's like, you know, this like grumpy little cinnamon roll that like looks bad and people are gonna think she's bad, but she's just a grumpy cinnamon roll. And she's like, you know, the kind of kid that I would have been friends with like back in the day. And oh man, yeah, that's pretty much where it started. I mean, the story was a lot different back then. It was very like anime influenced and very edgy, and everyone had like gigantic swords and whatever, because like that's what you do when you're like a teenager. But yeah, as I grew up and like my point of view changed and I got more like worldly experience and whatever and talked to more people, like the story changed, and yeah, that's what it is now.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
Well,
glad.
and now it's.
Oh,
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say I'm glad that I actually started it in like my mid-30s because I feel like I finally got my shit together. Like if I started it like when I was in my early 20s, it would have probably been something completely different because I was still like a baby idiot then, and like I wouldn't have known what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Now I think, you know, so much of the story is talking head, like it's not action oriented, which is in certain surprising ways, like it's very Shakespearean in its way, by which I mean not so much like Shakespeare, because it was theater. There was always this thing where it's like the action happens off stage. Like it was always what happens on stage, what the story is actually showing you and telling you are when the people come back. Like they go to the battlefield, they have the whatever, people die, things happen, it's tragic. Then everyone actually comes back on stage and talks about it and has the what are we going to do about it? What are the next steps? How do we feel about it? How are we dealing with it? But that's what you actually get from the actors, from the actual like dialogue and story. The action was always something where it's like, yeah, we're not going to have a fucking battle on stage. Like that's stupid. So you'd have a rare sword fight or something like that. But it was like, that's too difficult. We're just gonna talk about it. And it's interesting because that in my head, that always is now Shakespearean. Like that's the element where it's like big things are happening. The themes and the characters are all larger than life. Yet what we're getting from the storyteller is really the talking head, like the character interactions that are largely non-violent, non-action oriented. And then the action is something where, yeah, it's in between the scenes where people talk about it.
I think, Matta, you also do a very good job of, I don't know if it's fully intentional, but having characters avoid conflict as often as possible, which is rare in the comic book graphic novel space because it's always about the conflict. It's always about the fight. So I do think you ride that line very well, and having these characters sort of dig into their, for lack of a better term, humanity. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a comic about, it's about being human. It's like, I mean, in real life, like, I think a lot of us like really try to avoid conflict because like no one wants to fight. No one wants to get punched in the face. Like these things, they just don't happen. And like, I can't believe that like some of my characters would want to just be like, all right, no, I'm going to start a fight and do this and do that. And like, there's also consequences for fighting. There's laws against fighting. And it's not about that. Like, I know a lot of people have the power fantasy of like, oh yeah, you know, I would go and like punch this guy out and do that. And like, that sounds so stressful. I was actually talking with a friend the other day where he was talking about how people were saying that Tom Hanks's portrayal of Mr. Rogers was like, you know, lifeless or whatever, like an emotionless robot. And it's like,
interesting.
Well, my interpretation of that is that people want a Mr. Rogers that would like go out and like punch somebody and be like, that's bad, I'm a good guy, because they're so used to seeing like
the superhero version.
Like literally also, fighting evil.
Yeah.
I think people were expecting like, oh, but his real life, not just his stage persona, would be much more passionate. And not really. That was how he kind of carried himself through life.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
So
I think.
Oh, go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
No. You finish.
No, I lost my train of thought. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name? Jeff Ross suffers from the same thing.
Who's Jeff Ross?
Is it Jeff Ross, the painter from the
Bob
PBS?
Ross?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
You know, he has this sort of really pristine sort of public persona, and in real life, apparently, he was the same guy. And
he was a drill sergeant.
Yeah, he was a drill sergeant.
And when he quit the army, he was like, I never want to yell at anybody ever again.
Exactly. You know, and they exist. You know, not everyone is an asshole looking for a fight. Because,
or sometimes there are assholes who avoid a fight, because I have those too. But yeah, I mean,
and in Mr. Rogers' case, I know in his he's gone on record with saying that, you know, his strategy to deal with people like, you know, that were antagonistic or were itching for a fight or were in the way, he's like, if you keep this demeanor, if you keep approaching it from a no, I really just care about it, but not in a FU way, in a let's just talk about it way, like it worked for him. Like he realized that worked, and that he could move the needle on the things he cared about so much more than by getting angry and getting passionate in that heated way, which would just turn everyone he was talking to off. And so his whole philosophy was built around that. And of course, I think he just liked himself better doing it that way.
Kudos to you,
We all
Matta,
do.
for getting us to work into this conversation, both Bob Ross and Mr. Rogers.
You're welcome.
Yeah. How long is Sacrimony planned for? John wants to know. John, you don't want to know the answer to that.
John knows the answer to that already. I'm gonna be like 80 years old, and I'm gonna be like, all right, just 20 more issues to go, and this will be over. It's definitely a long format sort of story. It's gonna probably be somewhere between like 50 to 70 issues by the time it's done, because yeah, it follows the characters and their lives and the things they go through and how things change, and like, Kajad's gonna grow up and things are gonna happen. Like, she's not gonna stay a kid forever, because it's always funny to see these stories going on for like 20 years, and it's like, oh, this kid is still 8 years old. Like, I can't do that. It's like they're 8 years old and they still wear the same outfit. Like, okay, cool.
And what's the mother's name?
Unica?
Unica. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. I was just gonna go look for that. But you were mentioning earlier about how you had the whole like, these people are bad, those people are bad, and when you were a kid, you're like, I don't understand, I don't get it. And I do feel like Unica embodies that parental viewpoint where it's like, don't talk to these people, only talk to these people, don't show them that you're this.
That is she is truly the immigrant mother in that
right,
that storyline. So
worried about all the different things that can go wrong.
Connection for sure.
Whereas, and the child's just like, we could all be friends, or we could get like, we can quid pro quo shit.
Wide-eyed,
let's just talk to him.
Ready to experience the world. That's the child.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like when I was originally planning their dynamic, it is sort of like that overprotective mother and like the goofy kid that somehow hell bent on like just exposing their secret to everyone.
Yeah.
But,
but it's a question as to how important the secret is, and that is something that's kind of cool. You don't really, at least in trade paperback #1, it's not obvious how serious, like how important is it to keep this secret? What are the consequences? Why exactly is this so dire of a secret? And that is not apparent in trade paperback 1. So that's always something that I have a hard time judging either character for that reason, because I'm like, is she on point about how dangerous this is? Or is the kid on point for being like, I don't get it? And I don't know either. So I'm like, I'm just along for the ride, because I don't know which way that goes.
And you notice that Unica never actually directly tells Kajad, it's like, this is what's going to happen if you show people your wings. She's just like, let's make it a game. Let's make it fun, because like, you don't want your kid to be scared. You don't want to have to tell your kid that like, something bad is going to happen, like when people see who you really are. But issue 7, shit hits the fan. Like, it's not a super huge spoiler that like Kajad runs away from home, because that happens on like the 4th page of the issue. So it's like, you get to see like how she interacts with the world, like what she finds out, and like what the consequences actually are. That's like the entire volume 2 will revolve around that. Gotcha. And it's traumatizing.
We do see her dad. Like, obviously he's a character that people are very curious in for being who he is. And I'm assuming the wings are sort of a telltale sign of his kind of person. I mean, that's all I got in terms from what I've read. Is like, that's my suspicion, is like, okay,
read the field guide.
Read the field guide.
It's got a good chunk of information about him and like what he did and like why he became a god. And
so here's a good question for you. If people do get the field guide, do you, like, in your head, how important or integral, or to read the field guide, like say, read volume 1, then read the field guide, because it came out with issue 6, I believe. So read volume 1, read the field guide, then read the storyline of volume 2. Is that something that you feel is kind of baked into, in your head, baked into the experience of reading Sacrimony? Or, because a part of me is like, I don't want to dip too deep into the field guide yet, because I feel like I'm still along for the ride and learning things at the pace the story wants me to learn them. And the field guide feels a little bit like a cheat if I jump into it now. Okay.
It's not a huge cheat, but you definitely start to get like why Sifrim was so important to begin with and whatnot. And like that information will eventually be revealed down the road, because I don't want like things to just be in this separate thing that people have to buy. But it's like, you know, if you want like a little, I
Heads
guess,
up.
yeah, heads up or cheat sheet or whatever, just to like
Yeah.
know what everyone's deal is and like experience the story after learning that.
I do think the average sort of, comic graphic novel reading community breaks down into those two camps. You got one half who's like, no, I'm going to wade through this forest on my own. And the other half who's like, give me the guide. Give me the guide. So yeah.
I love both. I love doing both. I love experiencing things without like all of the little notes, and then like going back and having the notes and being like, oh, so this is why they said that. That's why this happened.
Right. But see, going back and getting the notes, and I think I'm the same way in that, like, the field guide feels it's too soon. So I'm sort of like, I poke at it, I look at it, I'm like, it's pretty, it's got lots of information in it, but I'm like, I feel like that the story is still in its infancy. It's still in its early stages. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I gotta wait. I feel like it's too early to dive into this. But
it might be a fun thing to dive into after Volume 2 is out. But then I think after Volume 2, I might make like a 2nd edition field guide and throw some more stuff in there too. Because there's a lot of things.
Another that I can then sit on until Volume 4.
Volume 4, then there might be a 4th edition field guide, and
right.
Then a collection of the field guides with extra.
Oh my god, it's gonna be, you remember those like Encyclopedia Britannica stuff? Like it's just gonna be field guides like that.
Absolutely.
It's like 300-page hardcover books, and there's like 16 of them, and it's like, why is this bigger than the actual story?
Right.
I hope not to get there. But
I feel like that's good on you though, because it's sort of like, right, she didn't cram all this into the actual story, and so
it would be so boring if I did. Like if everybody had to stand there and it's like, oh yes, Sifrim, the god of blah blah blah, who did blah 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 for the city, and like, no, we don't need to know that. We just need to know that he did something stupid. He got his ass kicked out of heaven, and then everyone else has to suffer because of that. Like that's all we need.
So question on terms of like how you reveal things in the story, because one of the things that struck me even the first time I read through the early issues, and definitely struck out, I feel like it hit me even harder this time, which is the way in which you reveal information. And it's not just, even though there's a lot of talking, so a lot of it is revealed through not the dialogue exactly, but like through the interactions of characters. But more to the point, this story, at least arc 1, is like this weird Russian nesting doll of present to flashback things, where it's like and they're all in media res. They're all like, we're kicking you off somewhere where it's like you don't have enough information. Okay, here's the flashback to that. Still not enough information, and you're still in the middle of something that you're totally off kilter with, and you don't understand how you got here, even though it's giving you a little bit more than the previous one. And personally, I really enjoyed that effect. It like you are always off kilter with even the scene that you think is going to reveal so much for you, and it reveals a little bit, but it's still so in the middle of something that you're like, I don't really know what's going on, that it's not just like, oh, there's all the answers, I can put this down now. It's like everything is intriguing in its own.
Every
like
answer gives you more questions.
Yes, like completely. The scene
which
itself
is a skill as a writer. That is a very difficult thing to pull off.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah. So Dallas, this was your first time reading it. What were what were your, in terms of like, what were your thoughts on the comic just on that like first read through? I've been reading Sacrimony. I've known Matta for a little while. So I'm really curious as to someone who's coming to this fresh from the start with the whole first trade paperback.
My first response is it gives me everything I want in sort of a Tolkien parallel universe kind of Middle Earth dynamic, but the characters are original. There's the cornerstone of this world, the relationship between Unica and the child. I have to say, the entire time I was reading it, actually, what I really wanted to do was pass it along to my 15 and 16-year-old nieces. I plan to actually,
Aw.
because there's something very empowering, to use a pretty common term. There's something empowering about the ability to tell a story that's this sort of deep and well written, and it is a page turner. And like we were saying earlier, that ability to have every answer lead to another question is a very difficult thing to do in any medium, and it's a testament to your world building and your commitment to the piece. So,
Right.
My two nieces for sure are going to respond deeply
actually,
to this. What?
Yeah, that is actually kind of a curious thing. Do you have much in the way? Kickstarter, you can't get a lot of like YA audience
Yeah.
for the comic just because they don't have credit cards, so they can't really have to
Right.
buy the things on Kickstarter. But I was gonna say, have you gotten any feedback from like that, like sort of the age range of like, tween to teen kind of a thing?
It's like I never really aim to gear it towards that age group because like clearly there's like a lot of F-bombs, there is violence, and when the violence happens, it is incredibly graphic. Like you will see someone
Right.
there with like a spear through their face, or you will
Right.
actually see like people getting lit on fire, because I don't want to like glorify the violence and make it look cool, like, oh yeah, they're flipping around and kicking people and stuff. Like, no, it's
Right.
just it is straight up terrible when it happens because violence is
Right.
terrible. So yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of like adult themes later on and stuff, and like.
But I do think
whatever.
because you do such a great job of avoiding the conflict so often, that when the conflict does happen, it's sort of a natural kind of progression in the storytelling rather than just sort of gratuitous, like you'd find in most video games. And like my nieces are all sort of, they cut their teeth on video games, so violence is nothing new to them. So the idea that in this sort of literary visual format that you at virtually every turn avoid the conflict or have characters that are attempting to avoid the conflict, I think you don't run the risk of having anything seem too gratuitous. So again, kudos, because it is a solid job of storytelling. And you've done some things that I think many creators can spend lifetime trying to do and never pull off. So good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I sell the book at cons, I definitely like if there's a parent who's like, "Oh, can my 11-year-old read it?" I'm like, I show them the worst parts of it, and I'm
Right.
like, "Are you okay with your child seeing this?" And they're like,
That's a
"No."
good way. Actually,
Yeah,
it's a good way to do that.
because
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
want it
actually
to come back
do
to
you get a
me.
lot of no's from that? I'm actually
I've had a few,
surprised. I
yeah.
feel like okay, a few. I feel like parents have come a long way since like
They
when I was
definitely
a
have, but
teen.
I do get
Yeah.
no's sometimes, or then I'll get them like they'll come back and it's like, "No, you know what? I will get this for my kid," because like I had a guy from Guyana, because I'm Caribbean, I'm from Trinidad, and like there's a Guyanese guy and he came by my table and he's like, we shot the shit about the Caribbean and the islands and whatever, and
Yeah.
I pitched the story to him and he's like, "This would be really great for my 12-year-old daughter." And I was like, "Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm like, it
Here's the
looks like it'll be great for your 12-year-old
Yeah,
daughter.
But you may want to read it with her. How
it
about
looks
that?
harmless at first, but yeah,
Right.
like things get dark, things get crazy. But yeah, I showed it to him and he was like, "Oh no, maybe it's not for her." And then like at the end of the day, he came back and he picked up a book and he's like, "Can you autograph this to Priyanka?" And I was like, "Okay, so you're getting it for her."
100%.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
All right, Dave.
And
So
hold her hand a
you
little
you picked up this series from the very beginning.
I
think book
I
2.
don't remember. It's been
I can check
these are
BackerKit and find out. We can answer these
I know
questions
we're
together.
on Kickstarter number 7, so I'm like, was I there from the beginning? I
And
feel
did
like
you read as you got the issues, or did you wait until the
I waited until I did read. So I read 1 through 5 because that was the finish of Arc 1 and I got them all digitally initially.
Okay.
So I read all of those then, and then I got the trade paperback physically when she finally did a trade paperback. And so this would my second time. Actually, I'm like, I want to read it as a trade paperback and do that.
It was meant to be read as a trade paperback, in all honesty. Like the whole arc was designed to be this like massive
Right.
story, but like since I
And I got
can't
that
put out
sense,
I can't put out a book every 3 years and have people still remember me, I had to break it up into like single issues, but the single issues still work as single issues, so you never feel like you got some sort of incomplete ending where it got chopped off at like an awkward point. Like,
I will
it's,
say
it's
too.
hard to make that like self-contained and then like have it still be part of a bigger arc.
I will say, reading the sort of the compilation, it did really flow really well together, and I can't how to say this diplomatically.
I couldn't tell you where the issues began or ended while reading it as a trade paperback.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. It really was. I imagine this was more satisfying than reading it issue by issue. For me, personally, that would.
It's something that needs to be binged because it's one of those things where it's like you have the question, then you get the answer to the question, and then you have like 5 more questions, and you're like, will these questions be answered? And it just keeps going. It's like a rabbit hole.
And that said, it is still fun because each issue or each couple, because reading it as a trade paperback, it was really hard to remember where those divisions were.
Yeah.
And so I was just sort of like, it's still a lot of fun because you just get like each issue is like, here's another handful of scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, here you go. Here's more of Sacrimony. And we're out of
here's
pages.
the field guide.
We're out of pages. We did finish the scene and we're out of pages. Come back for more next time. And I do really, I think it is really good that way. I'm just one of those people too that, I get so many comics that it's like, I always try to wait for a story arc. If I'm committed to a comic already, if I'm like, no, I like everything about this. I've sampled it. I'm in, I don't need to read every issue to reevaluate whether I'm committed to it. So cool. I'll just wait for a story, or, an arc of a story. And then I'll sit down and read it all in one go. But nevertheless, I do think you can read it issue to issue and just love the fact that you get an assembly of scenes, like more progress on all these characters, all these scenes. And the best part is when you go into an issue of Sacrimony or a chapter of Sacrimony, you don't know what fucking scenes you're going to get. You don't know where you're jumping to next, which characters you're going to focus on. It's like there's no obvious rhyme or reason to like how these scenes are stacked. And so each issue you're just sort of like, here we go. Let's find out what happens this time.
It gets a little easier to figure out, I think, once you see the complete, well, not even the complete volume 2, but like as you see volume 2 progress, you get it where it's like, okay, so this whole volume revolves around like this specific set of characters. Then there's like a backstory that links everything together that tells you more about these characters. And then like here are the other characters, like, the B team or whatever, still doing their thing. And like they're not forgotten. Here's what they're doing in the meanwhile, but then here's this like main chunk of story.
Yeah. And John says parents just don't understand. I heard. It's true, John. It's funny. When I was younger, this was the 90s, and like comic shops were very strict about the whole age appropriate thing because a couple comic shops had gotten like really in trouble. And it, like lawsuits.
Actually, there were massive political movements in the 80s and 90s.
Right. We were going through a dark time with comics specifically and having any sort of adult content in them because America likes to infantilize these things, and it's like they have to be for kids, or the default is like, well, people are just going to assume it's for kids if it's a comic, so the onus is on you depending on what's inside of it. But there were a couple comics, but this was also the era of Vertigo comics. And then, Marvel had this like very brief dalliance with adult comics as well, or mature themed comics as well. And I would have to bring my mom into the comic shop to flip through the comic to see if she would let me, because she had to buy it. I was never allowed. And she would have to flip through it. And I was like, and it's so funny because I remember some of them that were like Vertigo, like Hellblazer or something like that. And she would like flip through it and she's like, yeah, okay, it's fine. And there was this one that was like this total heavy metal TNA barbarian, type of thing. But I was like, it had one of my favorite, Liam Sharp, who was one of my favorite artists at the time. And I was like, oh, but it's a new thing about Liam Sharp. So she came in and flipped through it and she was like, yeah, it's fine. And we bought it. And then I took it home and was freaked out by it because I started flipping through it. And I was like, whoa, I didn't think there would be this much in here. And I was kind of like, Mom, what the fuck?
Like, you failed me.
I'm like, why did you buy this for me? What? Come on. So yeah, but I give my mom a lot of credit for being just sort of like, I didn't realize, because the rules in my family were like no R-rated movies until we were 18.
Right.
No, we were very like, whatever that guideline was, my parents were very like, as a rule, like, no, nothing. But whenever I would push my mom for something, like she allowed me to go see, I think, Die Hard 2 on my birthday one time. And it was one of those things where the parent had to buy the tickets and go into the theater with you at that time to go see an R-rated movie.
That's not too
Seriously. Bad. I mean, not too bad, but there were still, it's kind of like watching the movie with your parents. You're sort of like, this is a little awkward. This is a little awkward.
Yeah.
I was never happy about it, but she was more lenient than I thought she would be. But
so Matta, is this the only thing you're working on right now? What other irons do you have? I'm sure it isn't. I just want to make sure.
Oh my God, there's so much going on right now. I have another comic that I put out the first 2 issues last year, which was The Misadventures of Buddy and Friend.
There we go. There you go.
So completely different feel from Sacrimony. A lot of people don't believe that I also wrote and drew this as well.
Right.
Because it's just like,
I was gonna say, same art. She did the art of in that style as well.
Same artist, same writing.
But you kind of get you do the Sacrimony thing at the end of the trade paperback, right? The little almost sort of I don't know what they call that at the end of anime, when they always do that at the end of an anime or a manga volume as well.
Oh, like the Q&A?
Yeah.
Yeah, those were fun.
Or no, not the Q&A. Like they'll make their, like, even if it's a very serious dark manga, they'll have those final pages where all the characters are cutesy.
Oh, the
little I'm trying. There's a term. Chibi. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, just to take some of the edge off.
And anything else you can announce at this point?
Yeah, what else you got
on outside of Buddy and Friend, or not yet?
No, I can totally announce that I'm working with our guy John Westhoff on a new issue of Child Possession Services.
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm doing the interiors for that, and that's really exciting because like it has sort of those Sacrimony vibes where there is like a bigger thing going on, where there's like, kids and people getting possessed by demons and stuff, but it really revolves around like the drama that happens within the workplace, within like the Child Possession Services place. And yeah, how the main character, Connie, is kind of a screw up, but you can relate to her because like at some point in time she was really enthusiastic about her job, but she's seen things. She's definitely got like some PTSD going on that just makes her not care about her job at all, and like we've all been there. But yeah, it's kind of like this glorious like downhill ever growing snowball of like the consequences of her actions.
Ooh.
And it's just
those are always fun. Those are always fun.
It's always fun because I'm all about consequences. That's kind of like a theme in everything I do, is that like, even in Sacrimony, like someone does something, there's consequences. Buddy and Friend, someone does something hilarious, like there's hilarious consequences. So like going over to Child Possession Services and seeing that it is this sort of like dark humor, somewhat of a comedy drama type thing where it's just lots and lots of consequences piling up on each other, like that, it hits me so good. And also I don't have to do the writing, which is great.
Right. And get paid, maybe.
Yeah, that definitely got paid. So
definitely get paid. Definitely get paid.
Yes, I got paid. I got paid for half the book, so I've got the thumbnails, I've got most of the pencils. I just have to send them to John for approval, and yeah, we're working on it.
Now, how long, in general, jumping back, does it take you to crank out, since you're a one-stop shop, an issue?
It depends. I mean, something like Buddy and Friend I could probably knock out in like 2 to 3 weeks because the style is like really simple. I could draw it in my sleep. Sacrimony, it depends on the page, because some pages are just like, all right, there's some characters chilling and there's like somewhat of a background, and then sometimes it's like, okay, well, like, like here's this that'll take like 3 days of my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's anywhere between like, I don't know, like 5 to like infinite hours per page.
And how Nutter Butters she decides to be in terms of challenging herself, like on the page or the cover, because like there's always these things where she's like, this took me like all the lines, and it's like, it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it's sort of like, yeah, that took time. Like, yeah, I mean, it's so yeah. I think that also can.
Oh yeah,
kind of
I have a page in like Sacrimony 6 where it's like, okay, why did I draw all of these people on this page? Like this was like 14 hours where it's like
right.
look at all of these people.
Oh wow,
Right.
yeah.
And then every time you draw another panel, you're like, oh, and then reference from that angle, and those people are
It's like,
still
okay,
there,
so
and
that
it's still
person
the
was sitting there,
background.
yeah, it's but sometimes challenging yourself is fun. Like sometimes it does get sort of like, I'm tired of just like kind of drawing like a person chilling in a vague background. Like, let me put something else in and like spice it up a little.
Good job. Good stuff.
All right. Well, I think it's time. We're going to briefly go over and check out the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
We
finally reached 120.
Yay!
You guys don't understand like what's been going on for like the past 3 days. Was like it was at like 119, then it was at 118, then it was at 119, then it was at 118, then 118.
And of course you're watching feverishly, right?
Yeah, and then it's like I'm like, is it 120? Oh, god damn it, it's down to 118 again.
Yeah.
Right.
So whoever put me at 120, I love you.
Thank you, 120.
Thank you, 120. Yes.
120. You will get something extra from me for
gorgeous.
just...
You've cracked 3,000. That's yeah. So that's more than half. Not quite 2/3, but more than half. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. All right, and then we've got obviously the first trade is still available. All the single issues. You got digital catch-ups.
Well, not. I don't have the individual single issues anymore. I just have.
Oh, physical. You don't. Okay.
Yeah, just digital because I'm not reprinting like 5 single issues like over and over again. It's too much.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So digital single issues, folks, or the trade paperback. Those are your options. Yep. And then you still have issue number 6 physical. I'm assuming though. Yeah.
Yes, I do. I'm gonna have issue number 6 until pretty much the volume 2 trade paperback comes out, and then the single issues are gonna become obsolete because I don't want to keep printing those.
Yeah, I agree.
Like they're more costly to print than the trade paperback. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And $100 gets you a cameo, non-speaking, but you're there. In the book, drawn into the book. 150 color portrait commission. Oh, that's tempting. That's cool. Custom color portrait.
I may need that portrait of myself, actually. And that looks like me, actually. No.
I was gonna say, especially like smoking a joint. Make it a joint, and I think we're on the right track here.
Excellent. I had a lot of fun with that hat. I actually had asked the guy to like send a close up of the little decal on the hat because like I wanted to nail like every little detail.
Yeah, that is a detailed illustration.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this guy needs his own
and the fur coat.
This guy needs his own little ash can, actually.
Okay, did he ask for the fur coat, or was that something you put on him?
No, he gave me like a few different reference pictures of himself because this is how he normally dresses. This was an old high school friend actually named Elijah.
That's awesome.
Oh,
so like awesome. this is not him trying to be anybody aside from being Elijah. Like he's amazing and fabulous as hell.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so he's like, here's some reference pictures, and I was like, all right, I'll come up with something.
That's fantastic.
And yes, 120, John. 120 for Sacrimony.
Sacrimony.
Yes. Sacrimony.
Is that guy a writer?
It's like printing. Are you printing comics or are you printing money? Am I right? No.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we're printing comics, and I have no money. We know where all the Kickstarter money goes.
And full body commission 275.
Yep.
Then we get to the story. So where are we? Give us the pitch for number 7. Where are we in this story?
Oh my god. So where we are in the story is that Yunica has her work obligation. She can't be home to watch Kajad as usual. And Kajad is pissed off because at the end of the first volume, their relationship is not in a great place on account of Yunica completely missing Kajad's birthday, which a lot of people are pissed at her about, which I understand. But also she has her own PTSD. She has her own issues.
Give mom a break. What are you guys talking about?
Thank you, Dallas. Like there are so many people who are just like, oh, she's a terrible mom. She's
trying to keep the kid alive. Like, get over it.
Yes, exactly. You
I
get
gave you life. Calm down.
I mean, I would say she is kind of a terrible communicator, but outside of that, she's not a terrible mom, but she is
Look,
kind of a shitty
I've
communicator.
kept you alive. Calm down.
Right. And yeah, she had her own thing with her coworkers, where the whole trigger for her outburst was that, you know, her coworker was like, oh well, you know, Ankiel has a plan for us all, and like she's just like, let me tell you a thing or two about Ankiel, you guys, and like, goes on her
Right.
whole rant. Because it's gotta be like horrifying to actually know what's going on with the gods and not being able to tell your, like,
Right.
coming back to life to a time and a place that you're not used to, and like
Yeah.
not being able to tell your coworkers like the shit you've seen and the things you've been through. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, give mom a break.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so their relationship is not in a great place. You can see actually in issue 6 where like Kajad actually starts terrorizing her mom. Where it's like, oh, am I scaring you, mom? Like that's exactly what her mom was afraid of to begin with, because she's a domestic abuse survivor, because
Yeah.
her husband wasn't like great to her, and now her kid is kind of terrorizing her. And
Which is also it's so spot on in terms of a real world parallel of those relationships. So yeah, good job on that.
thank you. Yeah, I always say that like in Sacrimony, I'm writing like people. I'm not writing a genre. So even saying that it's a fantasy book, it's more of like it's a drama first and a fantasy second.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're in a terrible place. Unica leaves her work, and then Kajad is just like, you know what? I don't have to listen to her anymore. I'm gonna run away from home. Like I'm gonna see what's going on. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna make some friends.
I'm
and
gonna
this is gonna be
spread my
awesome.
wings.
Oh dear, yeah. Good choice of words. Very good choice of words. And yeah, that's when you get to see, like, you'll get to learn kind of like the creation story of the world, because there's this very specific holiday going on called the Harrowing, and you get to learn what the Harrowing is, like how the world came to be, what the deal with the gods are, like how the relationship between Ankiel, Zenet, and oh my god, what the hell's Akhmet, like how their relationship ended up being what it is. And yeah, Kajad gets to learn like how people feel about her wings. It's gonna be a traumatizing ride. Wrapped up in kind of a funny package, because she's always sort of the kind of like person to awkwardly point out like, this doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? And like that was me as a kid. Like that was definitely me when I'm told like some bullshit
It's
arbitrary
the
rule.
The default is logic.
Why?
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
which is actually also
a
very good stroke on your part, because the world is so fantastical and so sort of ruled by emotions that she's in. To have that character's kind of juxtaposition be, you know, logic, like her default is logic. That's a good job. Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like she probably thinks a lot of things that the readers are thinking at the same time. And I think she's a really great vehicle for the readers to experience the story, because she has no memory of her past.
Right.
So she's essentially a blank slate. Right. So you're learning things as she's learning things
in real time.
Time, and you can both simultaneously say like, "Hey, that's bullshit."
Right.
And it's a great experience.
Which again is why I think it's such an interesting work for that YA audience, because
Make
of
them
that,
question everything.
You know.
Right. Yeah. And I would say, you know, you rate this R. I would rate it PG-13. I don't know. I feel like R is a little hard.
I would say R is very hard for this. Yeah.
I mean, get back to me after the end of volume 2, I guess.
Okay.
It's like there's a whole red wedding sequence coming.
Not really, but there's some stuff, and there's also
she's like, I don't want to get young people hooked on it when I know where it's going. You're right.
This is the thing. Like I know what's gonna happen in like issue 3 even, and like, oh man, there's some incredibly dark themes of like terrible things. So
don't be afraid. Tell us.
Oh, possibly the worst thing is necrophilia. So yeah, it gets dark.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, like reanimated necrophilia. Come on.
Oh, I know.
She's like non-committal on that.
I'm fully waiting for the pages when you're. I need to see this one now.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it definitely it gets more and more like grown up as it goes on.
So the R is coming. It's going to earn its R. Is what
it's going to earn its R. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'll take that.
All right. Fair enough. Question for you: how many characters in this comic are, you don't have to name names, but are based on people you know?
None of them, actually.
Okay.
None of them.
I yeah, I don't do the thing of like, oh, I know this person. They would make like an interesting character, but it's more of like they're kind of
Experience.
they're made more of like experiences. Like I don't like
Composite
to
experiences. Yeah.
I don't like to do the literal thing of like,
Right.
oh, I went through this, so like this is the character's gonna go through this. Like I don't project anything, but still like bits and pieces of the characters are sort of like bits and pieces of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just it's not so literal that you can say like, oh well, she's Unica, right? Like that's her
Right.
projecting.
Right.
You
It's
do
not
a really
therapy.
good job though with dialogue and like the interactions between the characters. Do you pull a little bit from like conversations you've had in real life? And I don't mean word for word or anything like that, but just in terms of like the dynamic of the conversation, experiences you've had trying to communicate with someone else or watching two other people, like family members, friends try to communicate with each other, where that you then bring back into the comic, would you say, or not really
No.
there either?
I grew up
Oh,
around
that's
like
that's interesting.
I grew up around incredibly shitty communicators. Like I myself have been a shitty communicator for a very long time until like I learned that like that's not how I should be, or like that wasn't normal. Like it like I lived in a very passive aggressive household where like communication was just terrible. So
Right.
like the conversations in my head between my characters though were always spot on.
Right.
Like everything going on in here with the characters was great. Everything outside, complete mess.
Complete shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolute
Oh yeah.
awful.
Amazing. And here you guys, you can see
The
more and
pages.
more of the
Yeah.
early art pages. This is all from the first scenes of Sacrimony,
They
give
held
or
up
take.
really well. I'm so proud of them.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah, I don't
It
look
should
at
be.
them and I'm like, oh my god, they're so bad. Like, no, they're doing good for themselves.
Yeah, they are.
Which I think for you is that feeling of like, because it's the opposite of how you felt about it the first time around, right? So that's got to be a good feeling that now
Yeah.
you're like, okay, this was a good decision. Now I feel like they're holding up even years later.
I knew they would. I knew that I was like I made a lot of mistakes when I first started up in 2016. Like I knew it even as I was going through like, you know, the first volume or whatever. I was like I'm still incredibly uncomfortable doing this. Like it shows on the page. It shows like with the words, the art, it still shows like, you know, poses were still stiff, like expressions weren't where they needed to be. And I was like, you know, when the pandemic hit, I was like, "Oh, stimulus check. Hello, unemployment. I'm gonna learn to draw better." So yeah, I kind of like bunkered up and I worked on like, oh my god, you guys are gonna think I'm crazy, but like I probably redrew and recolored like the first 10 pages of the first issue at least like 8 times.
Wow.
Because I had to. I know it sounds like a crazy perfectionist, but I had to get it right. I had to set myself up in a
Right.
way that I knew like the art would hold up, the coloring would hold up. I wouldn't like
Mhm.
because like if I felt uncomfortable while working on the pages, I knew that it was going to show in the art. So I had to get comfortable. I
Right.
had to find something that worked for me.
That doesn't
And yeah,
sound too crazy because I've gone through 9 or 10 iterations of an act in a script before and hating
I'm glad.
myself the entire time, but I
Yeah,
just
and
had
then
to do it.
you get to the point where like you no longer hate yourself and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, this is actually great and this was worth all of the
yeah,
redos and all of the
yeah.
retrying because like you got
Yep.
something that you know is going to like hold up.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
And since you were already going back and redoing it the one time, like I feel like that becomes critical where you're like, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
might as well make sure I'm getting it right this
Yeah, because
time from the
one
get-go.
one thing that kind of pissed me off was that when I was kind of telling my friends about this, like, oh, I'm planning on redoing this because I don't like feel great about this art. They're like, oh my god, you're gonna do what Marvel and DC does,
Oh
and you're gonna like
gosh.
do a few issues, and then you're
Reboot.
gonna keep rebooting it. And I'm
Right.
like,
You're
no,
like, it's not
bitch,
a
that's not what
reboot.
I'm gonna do.
Right.
Like
And
I'm
that's not what a reboot is
That's
really.
it.
Like, you're not retelling, it's not the same story, but starting from like you're just going to tell it from in a completely different way, but the beats are more or less the same.
it's like,
It's
oh
like
yeah,
you were like, it's
we're
the
sci-fi
same
now.
story.
Like
Right,
Right.
yeah, it's the same, but with the polish that it needed to have
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was rough. And like
Yeah.
I'm not mad at past me. I'm glad that like we worked through this for however many years it took and like figured our shit out, because I'm entirely self-taught. Like I
Oh,
didn't go to writing
Yeah.
school. I didn't even read any books about writing. I didn't go to art school. I just kind of like, fooled around and found out.
Right. Well, I feel like that's where a lot of that great natural dialogue comes from, and like the scenes where it's less about action. You're not adhering to any sort of 3-act structure or
yeah.
hero's journey or blah blah blah. Like even structurally, you're just like, these are the scenes that I think should happen for people to have these moments and these conversations, kind of the fantasy, Kevin Smith Clerks kind of a thing, where it is just sort of like, I'm just having these characters have these conversations. It will tell a story, but it's really just these characters having these conversations in these scenes. And I don't know. I feel like for anyone who reads a lot, that is always so refreshing. And it's always wonderful to find. And no two people do it the same way either, right? Because it's like you're doing it through your lens, through your voice, through your approach to it. And when it comes to structure and storytelling, that's a harder road to hoe in terms of being unique and having your voice come through with it, because everyone's just doing this structure and you're so limited in how much of yourself you can put into that structure, or most people find themselves, I think, kind of pigeonholed in that. So yeah, I think that really comes through.
Yeah, that was part of the reason why I never wanted to actually read any books on writing, because I knew that it was like, okay, they're going to give me a formula and then I'm going to feel obligated to stick to that formula, and then like that's not what I want to do, and then I'm going to have like, inside of you there's two wolves. One wants to follow the formula, the other doesn't want to follow the formula. And
two wolves. Yeah. It's true.
Tearing at the same piece of meat, right?
Yeah, and like I didn't want to end up going down that road, so I just completely skipped the writing books, and I was just like, okay, what do I want to happen in my own story? Like, what don't I like about other stories? Like, what do I want to avoid? I think that was a better guideline for me. It's just like, what do I want to avoid doing? Like, I want to avoid like, showing these huge stupid battles and wasting space and whatever, and like, we'll just talk about it.
And
Everyone
also
will just sit
too,
there.
because of the kind of story you're attempting to tell, had you relied on those formulas, they would have been so reminiscent of your, sort of the archetypes, the standards in the genre, the Tolkien's, the
Right.
the Game of Thrones, that nonsense. So I think you do a great job of keeping these characters pretty. I mean, they use this word, and it's a positive, pedestrian in terms of the character's ability to walk through the world and be real people within the world rather than archetypes.
Right.
So
that is the highest compliment that I always get, is when someone's like, these characters they feel like real people. Like I could just walk down the street and like see someone act like them, and I'm like, mission accomplished. Because I don't want to create this sort of like extraordinary being with like awesome powers that goes around like kicking people. Like, I mean, there's a time and place for that, but like not here. Like everyone here, they don't have their shit together and they're just trying to get by.
Right.
And like that's the best they can hope for. And I like those kinds of stories because they're more unpredictable. Like if it was like, it's like, oh, Kajad comes back to life, and like there's a voice that says like, oh, you will be the greatest hero and overthrow the corrupt king, and like, or okay,
Xena shows up,
Yeah, she's like, ah! And she does that whole thing. It's like, yeah, like you kind of where that's gonna go, where it's like, okay, the good guy is gonna defeat the bad guy, however way they are. But what if
formula?
Like what if life is the bad guy? Like, what do you do then? What happens?
I think you have your new tagline.
What if life were the bad guy?
A tale of love, life, and death in no particular order, where life is the bad guy.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding.
All right. Well, so everyone, that is sacrimony.com/Kickstarter. That's where you can find it. If you haven't backed it, probably everyone who's watching has backed it. But if you haven't, you got to get over there and do that. If you've never tried Sacrimony before,
I love how you make it sound like a drug. If you never smoked that Sacrimony,
you never tried it.
It's like, but you should. You got to at least get that first digital issue, only in digital, but you got to try that, and then the entire first trade paperback, which is the highest
it reads
recommendation.
so well as a trade paperback. Like if you don't want the floppies or whatever, like just go for just the trade tier, and you will not be sorry.
Yeah. All right. So Dallas, what are you pairing with Sacrimony? What are you drinking?
Oh my God, I'm so curious about this.
So this is curious because I was torn.
I'm glad I had that effect on you.
You did. It's rare, actually. It's very difficult to do.
Amazing.
I will say this was tricky. I will not, Dallas. I have no backups that I'm going to say, but you know, obviously there is a wide array of things you could drink, and they all fit up to a point.
Yeah.
So this was, because it's such a multifaceted kind of work. There's so many elements, there's so many feelings, there's so many flavors to the work itself that it is really hard to pin it down.
That is a better description than I have. I'm like, it's just kind of like a terrible onion where you just keep peeling off the layers and it gets more terrible. But I guess that's
and it just makes you cry harder and harder as
it does actually. It does. A lot of people told me they cried at the ending of Volume 1, where it was like Unica comes home and Kajad is just like sleeping in her pile of clothes, and like people are like, "Why did you make me cry like this? I hate you so much." I'm like, yes.
my favorite passage is the patrons at the
oh my God,
when they start
probing
her. That was fantastic.
That was based on a real life experience, actually. So there are times where I put in a few real life experiences. Like I used to work at a quote unquote high end TJ Maxx in Manhattan.
Yes.
And the women there would always just grab my hair and be like, "You have such nice hair. Your hair is so great. Like, is this your real hair?" I'm like, "Ma'am, this is
wearing hats."
No, I wear it for the light, but I'm just like, "Man, this is a TJ Maxx, not a petting zoo. Like, please unhand me. Like, this should not be happening." And like, I kind of threw that in there because it's just like, you know, this is what people do when they see someone who looks quote unquote strange. I guess they just start grabbing at them and examining them.
Right.
And giving really weird backhanded compliments too, like because it's one thing to be like, all right, you have nice hair, but it's like, is this your real hair? So I had to I had to incorporate that, or it's like, oh, her hair, like this one's hair actually feels nice. It must bathe, and it's like, you assholes.
Right.
I love that. All right, so
I feel like every woman of color can relate, especially like the black woman at the office, where it's just like, oh my God, like. Let me grab your hair and feel how soft it is, or how soft it's not.
Right. It's curiosity with touch.
Whole social media campaigns of like, please, no, you can't just come touch people's hair. Like that was like the education for everyone who didn't experience such things, where it's like, don't. This is a thing, and it's a bad thing, and everyone wants it to stop.
This is not a compliment.
That's right.
Right.
It never is. People, listen. All right. So again, I was torn. As Dave knows, generally I approach these pairings in one of two ways. It's either the beverage I would like to enjoy while I'm reading as a passive consumer, or the beverage I would like to enjoy if I were inhabiting the world. And when I take that second approach, that second rubric, generally things get a hell of a lot more interesting. Because wine isn't necessarily the default, depending on the world, or wine in our contemporary sense. And this time, I went with the mead. I actually went with the honey mead, which was technically the way it sort of fermented. It could be considered a wine because they add hops.
It'd be funny if you brought up my favorite mead, but we'll see which one it is.
So, and the reason I chose the mead, if I'm honest, is because of the sweetness of the honey that the honey adds to certain types of meads, depending on the fermentation style. And there's always a hoppiness, not always, but there's generally a hoppiness, which is sort of a bitter note, bitter aftertaste. And it's that kind of spectrum that mirrors what I get from your piece, which is you get the sort of bitterness of these characters' reality, but you also get the sweetness. You get these pockets of sweetness. You get the sweetness of Unica and her sort of motherly attention. She's doing her best trying to keep this, now dead child, Or any
The
other way
hard
to say
working
that.
single mom too. Like,
Right. It's hard work being a single mom to a dead child. You know?
And working full time, like
and working full time,
and having PTSD. There's a lot going on.
PTSD on her own. Right. It's just, she needs a drink. And if I were in this world, I would do my best to, saddle up to Unica and say, hey, I know I'm a strange brown man you've never seen before, but here's a bottle of mead on me. Go knock yourself out. You deserved it, Mom.
Literally.
Right. So I chose the Dansk Mjød, the Kernes mead, which is basically a Viking mead. I don't have a bottle here with me. A Viking mead, honey mead. It's fantastic. It's and I'm not generally we'll put up the images when we post this, but it is honey notes. There are there's the hops, of course, because it's mead, and apparently the recipe is pretty old.
Interesting.
So yeah, I went with. I had an actual wine option, but it just doesn't. It didn't sit well with me. And I remember drinking.
I like your choice. I remember your explanation of the choice too.
Thanks. And I remember drinking this mead, and it was that kind of thing where I could probably hold a carafe, jar, or glass of that all night and get sloppy drunk and still be happy. And sort of share it with everyone I encounter. And I probably would have come across Unica, who probably would have been staring at me like, who is this strange, large brown man looking at me smiling? It's like, I know your story, girl.
Oh.
So, yeah.
You got this, Mama. Like,
you got it, Mom. Yeah.
That's a good choice. Oh, I gotta ask you,
like
since we're talking about mead, have you ever tried? I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but it's Axum Tej, like AXUM.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my favorite because it's an Ethiopian honey mead, and it has like all of these good like spices to it.
It is. It's very spicy.
I love it.
Fun.
I love my spices.
It's fun. It feels like
Dallas, text me how to spell that when we're done here. I can
put it in the chat, I guess.
Oh yeah,
put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
It feels so celebratory, actually. It just feels like a party every time you have a glass of that one.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. Actually,
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I will put it for the listeners, if you guys care and you want to look this up as well.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would pair with Sacrimony, just because I like it, and it's like Sacrimony's kind of warm, kind of sweet, kind of spicy, kind of bitter. Like it's got everything.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, that's awesome.
I kind of wish I had some now. But I have to go like all the way into Manhattan to get it in this entire journey because like Bronx liquor stores don't have these things.
Bronx liquor stores don't have this.
No, it's like you want Johnny Walker or you want Jack Daniels. Like neither.
All right.
Like I don't hate myself that much, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I got to see
if I don't hate myself at all. For the record, I love myself.
Nevmo, Total Wine, something like that. Maybe a shop around LA. But it's a good thing about LA is like I have a chance that I can find just about anything.
Actually, Dave, you used to live near Little Ethiopia on Franklin or Fairfax, and they have
it. That makes sense.
There.
Yeah,
that has it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I will have to go back for that. So. I did not choose like a dessert style type thing, like a honey mead. If you want to call that a dessert style, I would personally, but something sweet, like even if it was going to be like a white dessert wine or a port style or all of those were good with the comic. And I highly recommend if you guys can go out and get a dessert style wine or other kind of alcoholic beverage. It works really well because they've got a little punch. They've got that sweetness to it. You sip it slow, which that is one of the things. Like this comic is a dense. You don't blow through it. It's not a. Yeah. It's a chunker, and you don't like when you're reading. You're taking like the art. There's a lot going on in every panel. You're taking in what you're looking at. The story does not, it doesn't just spell it all out for you. So you're always looking at like, where are we? What are these people holding? What are they wearing? Where is this place we're at? And then you're taking in all the dialogue and taking in what's happening. So it's not the kind of book that you want to get drunk fast, because then you will be rereading it tomorrow. You're not going to have taken in as much as you need. So for me, I think that really that sweet spot was something. It needed to have a level of approachability, but I wanted something more complex than most dessert wines in the ultimate end. I think that was something that was really calling to me, was the complexity over the approachability and the easy enjoyment. I really did want something where it's like every sip, you're like, ooh, I need to think about that a little bit. Like, it's good, but my brain's working to break down why it's good and how it's good and all the different things going on in your mouth while it's going on. So this red wine that I'm drinking right here is the bad boy, and it is an Irpinia Alianico.
Alianico, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the Petilia Irpinia. So Irpinia's in Campania. And a lot of Alianico is a native Italian grape that you can find it grown elsewhere these days. There is some grown in California. But Italy is really, and Campania specifically, is kind of like the homeland for the Alianico grape. It's where you get the best of the best. If you ever see a bottle that has Taurisi, Taurisi, that is one of the best regions in Campania for Alianico. Usually pricey. Just it's like if you get it straight from Taurisi, you're probably looking at like $40 to $60 a bottle, kind of a thing. So
Wow.
The Irpinias tend to be a little more on the affordable side, more like 20 to 30
Right.
a bottle.
That's my price range.
Oh, yeah, a little more, a little less break the bank.
I can afford that on my self-published comic salary.
Exactly. And this worked really well. So why Alianico? There's a lot of these wines from Italy. You've got Barolo, you've got Brunello, you've got these like they're reds that they age for a very. What's the other one that I'm trying to think of right here? Not Tannat, but there's one other. Can I remember the name? It's Sagrantino.
Okay.
There we go. So Sagrantino, but these are like reds that like you kind of want to age for 10 to 15 years before you drink them, because they're that unapproachable in their youth. And they don't even release it to the public for 5 to 6 years. There you go.
At 15.
Exactly. Alianico is one of the. This will also age 10 to 15 years really easily and will get better if you can sit on it. But it is gentle enough still as one of the great deep reds of Italy, where if you do drink it in your youth, like it's nice. Like you can tell it will get nicer. It's still got some rough edges to it in its youth, but not so much that you're going to be like, okay, this is a challenge. Like I'm drinking it because I spent a lot of money. So, but this is one of those reds where the thing I love about the complexity of an Alianico, it has a smoothness, unlike the Barolos and Brunellos in its youth, where you can really drink it easily when young. But it's like it's more florals than it is fruit. It's like it's got all these crazy florals going on. Like even on the palate, you're like it's like edible flowers to some degree, where you've got some fruit, you've got some cherry notes, you've got a little bit of like raspberry in there, a little bit of tartness, but then it's just like fucking flowers in liquid form. And it's doing all sorts of and herbs, I will say as well. So you've got some woodsy elements in there. You've got like some thyme. You've probably definitely like some bay leaf flavors in there and scents. And it's just, there's so much going on in the glass. It was the red that when I sipped while reading Sacrimony, I was just like, oh yeah, this matches everything that's going on in this comic. Like how much I have to think about the comic while I'm reading it is how much I have to think about the wine while I'm drinking it. Weirdly, it's not distracting though. Every time I take a sip, I just pause for a minute, think about it, enjoy it, back to the comic, put it down. And it's not a chuggable wine. It's not the kind where you are just like, like it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So you drink it at the right pace. The comic and it just like, I felt like my brain was in the same space when reading the comic and when sipping this. So I highly recommend a well-made Alianico. And really, there's not that much in the world. Like, they're all pretty much like, no one makes cheap disposable Alianico. You're never going to find one cheaper than that $20 to $30 range. It is always going to be on that high end and well crafted, well cared for. So yeah, I think that was my baby for this one.
That was a good sell. I mean, also the fact that you say that there's so many flavors going on and like it's still good. Like, I feel like that also encompasses Sacrimony, where there are like there's a lot of themes going on, there's a lot of characters from different backgrounds going on, but like none of it feels disjointed. So good choice.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yay!
Yeah,
So quick question, Matta. We normally ask all our guests to do the whole shtick where they like bring on a comic that they're enjoying and spot. I didn't tell you to do that for this, so I'm just wondering, did you, or do you have a comic you want?
And if not, what are you enjoying?
Oh my goodness!
Enjoying? Yeah. What's something that just like stands out in your brain right now that some other comic that you just want other people to know about?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many, like
I know.
such as Armageddon Quest. Which
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I mean, like Armageddon Quest is great because it's like I told you, it kind of rolls the same way Sacrimony does, where like you look at the cover and it looks kind of like innocent at first. You see like Tazio there, and he's like all cute.
Get this
and
for my kid.
And, yeah,
like,
and
no.
Yeah, and he's standing there and he's looking all cute and stuff. But then you look into the background and there's like his mom like shooting an arrow at him, and there's this stuff going on, and then like
it gets worse.
Yeah, and
man.
I read like I think a decent portion into the digital that you sent me, but I didn't want to like spoil myself because I like reading physicals, but I just needed to know what was going to happen. And it is one of those things where you're like, oh, it looks cute, but then you're like, oh no, like there's his mom trying to kill him, there's like this other person, there's
themes.
It gets dark, and it
gets biblical.
There you go. There you go.
Straight up biblical. And
Armageddon Quest, guys.
Yeah, because it's really one of those, like, I love the kind of comics where it is like there's no sort of like theme or like emphasis on like one certain thing. It's very much like that sort of anything goes, where like this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. It doesn't stick to like one particular like genre type thing. Like, I love when things are that unpredictable. Yeah. Because I'm one of those people that like I probably inherited it from my mom, but we can like predict exactly how like a movie or a show or a book or whatever like how it's going to go and what's going to happen, because like everything follows a formula, and we have like really good pattern recognition skills because we've all been through some shit. So like you develop the skills as like a survival mechanism or whatever. But like
100%. People often I often get people that are like, hey, would you look at this like pitch, this log line and this quick synopsis and like give me some feedback? And I'm like, sure. And I'll read just like the 2-paragraph synopsis, and I'm like, okay, so before I give any feedback, question, is this how it ends?
Yeah.
I'm like, is this
where we're going, right? Yeah.
Right. And they're sort of like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Well, no,
yeah, they're always offended.
Like, yep.
Right.
You're saying that my story's unoriginal. Like, no, just saying that you gave too much away.
A lot.
Right. I'm like, if you present it this way, there's like, that's kind of the obvious conclusion. Now, when every once in a while, they'll be like, oh no, it's this other thing. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Congratulations.
Right, exactly. Congratulations, you picked
You've
the
earned
twist
my
that
respect.
is not. Yeah, that is not everybody else's. All right, so next question. We do have one more book we should talk a little bit about today. If you guys read it, Matta, you got your copy.
Yes, I was confused because I remember like I got like a mysterious Amazon package and I was like, what is this? Like, there's no.
I told you the day before.
You did, but my memory is terrible. So it's like I didn't order a comic. What's going on? And then like 2 days later, it registered, and I'm so rude. I forgot to thank you for it. First of all,
he will send you some crap in the mail for sure.
I will some stuff. Well, I messaged her and I'm like, you've got one coming in 2 days, like 48 hours. It's gonna be at your doorstep.
You didn't say what it was. You're just like, I'll send you a little something special for New Year's, and I was like, what's going on? Okay, here's my address. I did
say it was arriving Wednesday.
You did. And my brain still didn't put it together.
Well, and it was meant to have a note in it. Like I told Amazon to deliver it with a note.
totally fudged the bucket on that.
yeah.
They fudged the book. Okay. Because it was like, this is the book for the book club for the live stream. And it had a one line that like explained what this was. And
Nope,
I
they
just
didn't do it,
assumed
but
you would know.
yeah, but when I saw you doing the promotion, like, we're talking Sacrimony and Mr. Invincible, I was like, oh, dipshit.
Oh, there you go. So Dallas, were you able to get
I've read
this?
it. It's fantastic. I mean, it's
It's
clever. I've got thoughts.
It's clever.
It's so clever.
It is.
Very clever.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the things that I did love about this is, it starts off kind of clever. Like you're like, oh, cute.
Yeah,
like
and then you're like, is this
the
gimmick gonna get old?
Right, exactly. Because it's thin, but when you're talking about like 1 to 2 page strips, you're like, that's a lot of pages.
Exactly.
That's gonna
it's
keep
like
going.
16 panels on like every page, so it still is kind of
Exactly.
like a very dense read. Doubly so because you have to pay attention to like the panels and the sequences, and like then you have to go back and you have to look at past panels, and like your eyes just going all over the place. Like it's very intense for something that looks so simple. It is deceptive.
Yes. And I will say right here, I know I've said this before, like in the Wanted Comics Book Club page, but it's like, you really do need the physical copy in order to appreciate what's happening. I have not tried the digital. They sell a digital copy, and I'm like, how?
You'd have to like go down and then scroll back up, and then go down and scroll back up. Like,
well, what about the one who's like, I'm going to give away a few things on this. So, if you want to read this, if just what we've said so far, you're like, ooh, cool.
It won't really
turn this off now.
Much. Yeah.
Go read it, come back. But the guy who transports on flip sides of the page, I'm like, how is that going to work on digital? That took me a little while to figure out when I read the fucking physical copy. I like had to read the story a couple of times to be like, wait, what is happening in this story? And then I realized they were both moving between
the page.
Where they had like the little cutout thingy, right?
Oh no, not the cutout thingy. The guy who goes through this portal.
Oh,
right?
the jester?
Yeah, but what he's doing is he's porting to the other side of the page, but then porting back, so you have to keep flipping back and forth to see how that goes.
I only got that when Mr. Invincible was like, "Oh, what? He's doing this backwards," and I was like, "Wait, what?" And
what exactly?
Like
that took me like I read the story like 3 times before. I was like, I'm not following. I don't, and I felt so dumb. I'm like,
like at first you're like, this is bad. This story is bad. This whole thing is bad. And then when you get to it, you're like, no, I'm bad. My brain is bad.
That's brilliant. Exactly. But I like that the comic does not, or rarely, really stops. And they're like, here's the key to understanding this comic. This mini comic that we just the story that we just told you, you've got to fucking figure out what it's doing with the form to understand how it's playing with it. And that was the first one that I was just like, I literally went on to read other stories and had to come back to it because I was like, I don't understand what it's doing. I don't think I get it. Exactly. And then of course they start combining them, so it's like, here's one trick, here's another trick, here's a third trick. Now here's a story with all 3 tricks happening at the same time. And that complexity, just that, I don't know. This is one that like
planning does it take to do something like that? Is my question.
I don't know.
It honestly it feels like reading it, he probably had some gimmicks that he wanted to try and was just exploring. Like that one you just referenced, Dave, like it just seems like a person who's thinking out of the box when it comes to the comic format. It's just like, yeah, I'm gonna make a character that has to, you have to flip back and forth because it's a portal, and the way to represent that is to flip back and forth. So it seems like this guy is it also is reminiscent for some weird reason of Tintin. There's a real Tintin kind of vibe to it,
style wise. Like aesthetic.
It's he's a fun character. I love that Pasolini, I think his name is Jasolin, is just playing with the format in a way that I've really never seen before. Honestly.
That's like, it's another thing that like it definitely can't be learned. It's one of those things where he just does it, and that's crazy. Like I don't have the capacity to do something like this, or like have this sort of panel layout or anything. Like this is just like You almost want to be like, how much drugs do you have to do to be able?
Well, he's French, I believe. Yeah, he's French.
So all of them.
Yeah.
Well,
so
and
all
I
of
think
Okay.
over there too, like they've got a lot more like art school type stuff. Like they take it a lot more. So, like even the comics form is taken so much more seriously than it is over here. And so it's very likely that he has a lot more like art theory and I don't know, like
and
things
just
where it's
in
like
general,
he
they're a
can
lot more
play with it
experimental
more.
with
True.
literary styles and art styles. So I think
Yeah.
that's a testament to him for sure. Yeah, he's a funny character, and the B characters are all fun. His foibles and his foils, his nemesi, I suppose.
Yeah.
The mad scientist is
Yep.
classic. You know, he's such a classic villain.
Well, and that's I mean, it's basically a Saturday morning cartoon,
It really
but
is.
then it does with and you know, even the villains, it's like a rogues gallery of a
Yeah.
superhero. It's like very traditional, very exactly what you expect. But then what it does visually with the medium and how it plays with it is just and it does it so casually, which is kind of the thing, is you're just sort of like, the fuck, man?
It's
Like I've
no big
never
deal.
seen this.
Right.
Yeah, it's like I've never seen this before, and you're just like, yeah, it's a 2-page panel. Okay, on to the next one, and you're like, no, that blew my mind. Like, I always call this? It's like a narrative. I shouldn't call it a narrative version because this is also narrative, but it's like if you took understanding comics and instead of teaching you directly anything, like it's not explaining anything to you, it just does it.
Yeah.
It's just like everything in
walking
understanding
you through
comics.
how to break the format. Yeah.
Right. It's like instead of walking you through it like an instructional where it's like, are you still with me and hand holding you? It's just like, oh, okay, cool. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here's all the things you can
It's
do
like,
with the medium.
I'm gonna throw you in the water and you're gonna learn to swim
Right.
somehow.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not going to explain shit to you. You're just going to have to figure out what we're doing.
Just, flail your arms and legs until something happens or not.
Yeah. And I will say that is the one connection between the two books for this month, between Sacrimony and this, is the whole like you're in the deep end right from the get-go, and you are just like, figure it out, man.
Yeah.
Just go. Just go.
You know, the other thing I really appreciate, and I think there's some graduated sort of context and themes that he's really working out with this rather simplistic comic book graphic novel. And I'd have to read it again and write a whole essay on what. But the fact that he takes this character, and this character being the only person who understands that the character is breaking the format, is breaking the wall, is reading outside the lines, is, coloring outside, jumping page to page. The fact that he says, well, I'm invincible because I'm the only one aware that this is a tale. We're in this story. There's some commentary there, and as far as I know, the author doesn't do many interviews, so I would love.
We'll never know. It's probably on purpose, just to leave us all confused.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it's funny. I keep misremembering the title. I always want to call it Mr. Incredible because that seems more fitting for like what he's doing.
I've also done that. I was like, oh, where's the Mr. Incredible book? And I look at the title like, that's not right.
Right, it's like incredible. Why he's not invincible, but he's not invincible. Not really,
but he is invincible in the world he occupies. He's invincible, kind of,
like because what he can do, and he can see what other people are doing.
His existence. He's like, I'm invincible. The rest of you aren't. But in this world, because I have this objectivity,
right? All right. So for the two of you, do you have a favorite, either story or shtick?
Yes.
That this comic does.
Absolutely. It is actually the simplest one, but I think it's so brilliant. And it is the one with the boat where he drops the anchor on the boat because you actually see his power work against him for once.
Right. That's true. And that's good.
That was like the most refreshing one I've seen, because everything else he's like stopping evil, he's like solving a problem. This one he made a problem and it stands out to me.
He's like I was like, oh shit, right, I can do that. Sorry.
Yeah, he's just like, what the hell happened? It's like, oh, hey, look, a seagull. Like, perfect.
Yeah, this for me, it was the one with the polar bear. when he
yeah.
when the guy started reading the story, and of course, Mr. Invincible jumped down into the story and started fussing with the polar bear, but the guy had to read him out of the panel. Yeah, that was fun. For the same reason, he bit off a little more than he could chew.
And I love it when that happens, because it's so easy to fall into the gimmick of like, all right, he solves all of these problems super easily, and there's no actual real conflict except for like when his powers backfire, and it's a great change of like the feeling of things, so that the gimmick itself doesn't get stale.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because that was like what I thought going in. Like when I saw the first page, like admittedly, I kind of like rolled my eyes. I was like, all right, well, this is where this story is going, and then it completely took me by surprise. Like just how much he was able to add on the other characters, like just like how he was able to use their gimmicks, and just like it did not get stale at all. And to have a gimmick like that and keep going with it for like 100 pages, and have it not get stale, like that is art.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
I love the wiki. There's a wiki for Mr. Invincible, of course.
Interesting. There's a wiki for everything.
Top strongest fandom, characters. His dimensionality is 3D. His threat level is, a cub plus. Fourth wall awareness is one of his strengths. Retrocognition and precognition, spatial manipulation, teleportation. Yeah, it's kind of
a lot going on.
Yeah,
indeed. Cool.
All right, but who would win in a fight, Goku or Mr. Invincible?
Right.
Like that's the next step, right?
Well, I think to be fair, I would love to see
in a
Goku,
comic, Mr. Invincible. Outside of a comic, Goku. I mean, that's kind of your answer right there.
Good answer.
On the page, yeah, for sure.
Right, because he's kind of shit out of luck if he's not on a page.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's whatever medium he's in. He can always he's aware
jump
he's
between
in that
cells,
medium.
maybe.
Exactly. So, the animated.
Yeah, this actually, I will say, because I'm in the process of writing 2 comics, graphic novels now, and I've been playing with form a lot in one of them, and it's kind of been a problem because the audiences are really diehard when it comes to some of the form stuff in books and graphic novels. In general, I don't give a damn what people want to see. I write what I want.
Yes,
but
love that energy. Never lose it.
That isn't always received well. But this one in particular, I've been futzing with the forum, and it was.
Dallas is still turning it into managers and agents and producers and shit like that, and so he actually has to suffer the feedback.
Yeah, and it generally does. It gets 1 round of feedback, and I say no, fuck you, thanks, goodbye. I'm getting better at that now.
I mean, there are some things that it's completely fine to not budge on, especially if it's something you feel strongly about, like a scene you feel strongly about, and then someone's just like, why would you have that in here? Like I tried having an editor for Sacrimony, and it was the most miserable experience. It was sort of I was bouncing ideas off of a friend, and he was kind of shooting me down in weird ways where he thought he could predict what was going on, and I was just like, this is not working. Where it's oh well, this character is only here for that. You don't need them. You don't need this. I'm like, no, that's I need my characters.
Also you need them to breathe a little bit, right? And I think that's the thing. They can't all be purely plot motivated, where it's this is telling the reader something they really, really need to know or not. And it's but it's a scene where we get to see other facets of this character, see them struggle against something.
He's a writer. He's very formulaic to his own detriment, where it's I can see you're following a formula. I can see that your character is saying this because it's part of the formula. Nobody would say something like that, even to their therapist. Come on, what are you doing, guy? But he's kind of he was trying to put me into that sort of formula too, where it was just
and that has its space and time for sure.
It does, but not here. And it was oh well, are you plot driven or are you character driven? I was ¿Por qué no los dos? And apparently that was the wrong answer.
I feel the side to that, because sometimes you'll read something or watch something, and one of the accolades things can get is there's no fat on the thing, right? It's it's exactly what it needs to be and nothing else. But I feel that's actually harder to pull off than people think, because it means it wasn't a detriment. There's no fat on it, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't just a series of really cliche, I've seen this scene a billion times, I'm bored reading or watching this. So I think when you give that accolade, that's a true thing. Like, wow, I can't do that. Like, as a writer, like, I could never have that little fat on something and have it come across like, it would be so false that it would just never work, I don't think. So when I do encounter that, I'm like, shit, that good job. Like, there is no fat on that, and it sings, and that is not easy to do. That's its own skill.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you're doing it to have no fat on it, I think most of the time, most people, they overestimate how well they can do, like how well it's coming across with no fat on it, where it's like everything is exactly what it needs to be. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know.
It's like, okay, you got all the action scenes in there, but I know jack shit about the characters. Like, like, what did I just watch?
And the scenes we get aren't very creative and aren't, it's like, again, why am I reading this story? Like, why that doesn't, once I'm past the age of, like, I don't know, 18 to 20, I'm done. Like, I've experienced every story in some way, shape, or form by that point in time. So at that point, I need something else. I need a version of the story that actually gives me something that, brings me to the table. And
like that's.
But
that's
I mean,
it's hard to deal with editors, especially like when they are trying to fit you into something that you don't want to be.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of finding an editor that understands what you're trying to do. It's definitely that you can't just find any editor. One of my friends who does a webcomic, she had like a really terrible experience with an editor where she has a comic that has sort of like similar vibes to Sacrimony, but like much more cozy in the sense that it's like less trauma, less lower stakes, but it's just like, it's about a bunch of characters, like, just living their lives. It's a supernatural story about like an ordinary girl who gets trapped in this sort of like world of like monsters and vampires and like psychic knights and whatever. And it's like, she gets taken in, and like her roommate.
Psychic knights.
Yeah, her roommate is like
there's
an
interesting play on words there. I like that. Psychic Knight sounds like
it's a good name for a band,
sexy,
probably.
It's like a sexy Middle Earth kind of.
Kind of. Yeah. Story, so she gets taken in by like she's an ex-knight now, but like a psychic, and then there's like a vampire there, and like it's about them going through their lives and figuring stuff out and kind of like learning about each other's pasts, and like they're kind of just waiting for the right opportunity to return this outsider girl back to regular land. And she ran it by an editor, and the editor is just like, this has no plot. And it was like, that is incredibly mean if you don't understand like what she's trying to do with this like really wonderful, like whimsical, like very beautifully drawn, like very detailed story. It's just like to just look at what she's done, and for her to say like, okay, like how can we kind of like make this fit together, and just throw it back in her face and be like, this has no plot, like and then suggest a bunch of edits that kind of guts like what the entire story is about. Like
it's
guts the experience.
Many of those guys default to the formula because that's that's the ballast for many people. So
that's her in a bad place for a while too, because then she's really like, am I a failure? And like she had to like, kind of ask us, like her other artist friends, like, does this really have no plot, or like whatever. And it's like everyone's like, no, we get what you're trying to do. Your editor is just like a colossal asshole.
Well, and when they say it has no plot, I mean, they're talking about like, there's no, like, what's the end game? Like, I need a log line kind of pitch. Like, what is happening?
They're looking for a skeleton that just jumps out at them, that is easily identifiable.
Something predictable.
Right. And I've been like, so, me and you've probably heard of this in other times. Maybe you haven't, but like me and Dallas were literary agents for a little while.
I did not hear about that.
You did not know this.
No.
So we were
learning all sorts of things today.
We were comic book literary agents. We exclusively represent
the only ones in town, creators. As far as we know.
The only ones in town. And it's how we felt, really. Once the literary agency, once we moved on to do other things in the film and TV world, this was a sort of me coming back to like the whole Wine and Comics pairing show and the crowdfunding thing is like my return after we took like years off because the hustle Just
I
like we were
honestly,
burnt
I read
out.
like one comic during our hiatus, like, and
I know.
that's
Wow.
coming from reading like 10 a week
Right.
and just being just it
What
was
was the one comic?
um
If you
oh
remember.
Elephant Men actually.
Oh, Elephant Men.
The
That's right.
Elephant Men.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think he was sitting on them because they were like, he had gotten them all at
Yeah.
conventions back in the day. And then he's like, well, I got this stack of Elephant Men. What am I going to do with them? I might as well read them.
Like, finally, I'll read
but
one. Okay.
we've been, I won't speak for Dallas, but like I've been that bad guy editor
Oh,
where
yeah.
it's like I push for something that I know will make it easier to pitch, right? Know to make it easier to sell. And there was one comic, it was called Hopeless Maine.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
we actually got the comic set up at Archaea
Yeah.
at the time, if you're familiar with Archaea Press.
No.
And they were bought, so now they're a part of Boom Studios.
And
Wow.
they would have responded very well to
Sacrimony. Yes,
Yeah.
they would have. Hopeless
Interesting.
Maine actually was like a very
Yeah.
gothic and goth and
Yeah.
gothic Sacrimony in many ways.
Yeah.
And I responded a lot to the comic. And as a comic, we didn't touch it. We were
Yeah.
like, this is brilliant. This is amazing. We got it sold to Archaea. They started putting out graphic novel volumes of that. And then it was time. And then the creators were like, we really want to pitch a movie version of
Yeah.
this. I was like, cool.
But
That's going to take some work. I'm like, that a movie, and not a TV show, mind you, a movie. And
How
I'm
do
like,
you condense like several graphic novels into a movie?
it's work, but it can be done. I mean,
it can be done.
You know,
What would the end
already-
result be?
Right. And
Yeah.
so I had ideas. I was like, there's a way, but it is like that first movie, like not wherever else it goes, not, if it's a hit, like you're going to have more clout after that. But if you want to pitch something that's going to be like a 90-minute, whether it's animated or whether it's live action, but you're going to be like, this is going to be somewhere between 90 to 120 minutes max.
You're going to need some.
And this was, all in the 2010 to 2015 range of years. So it's like the 2.5 to 3 hour movie was had not taken over everything yet, really.
Save the Cat. Have you heard of Save the Cat?
No.
Okay. Well, if you ever
As a rule,
decide to
yeah.
translate your properties into film and television, that's probably going to come up on your dashboard at some point.
Yeah.
It became the manual for people who are attempting to write scripts, teleplays, pilots, films that sold. It was the impetus. The emphasis was on selling, and so because of that, it was an identifiable formula of what Hollywood was responding to in terms of the sale. And, as Dave was saying, to take something like Hopeless Maine and then translate that into a 90-minute film or a TV series, unfortunately, you're going to have to find a way to take this creator's baby, their child, their firstborn son or daughter, and hack off its limbs and then rearrange them. So, yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. I should realize I have volumes over here on the shelf. I should probably pull one out. But so we had a falling out with the creators actually because of this movie.
Oh my goodness.
Pitch idea where I was like, okay, because they were like, they would send me a version, like kind of the writer of the book even had written like an entire screenplay. And I was like, this is I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm like, this is unfilmable. Like, this is not something that's possible. And I was basically like, I can't pitch this to anyone I know. Like, it's my reputation on the line, and I know it's your baby and it's your work, but I'm the face. I'm the person they're going to know. And Hollywood does have, like, there is the contention there. The issue is that if you keep calling people up, getting meetings and pitching them shit that they think is like,
you're blacklisted, right? Like,
not blacklisted, but they're like, this guy wastes my time.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna stop taking meetings with you. So you have to be very cagey about how, like, you can have that one or two projects where you're like, I know this is insane, but please hear me out. But you've got to do that sparingly. And the problem is of course, every creator wants you to be their thing, right?
Oh,
Where it's like, well, but my baby's the one you're going to go be the insane person for, right? And it's like, I did that for another creator already this year. Sorry. It's like,
Yeah.
I
okay.
remember.
And
It's so funny you say that, Dave. I remember taking one of some comic property into Overbrook, and it was the same thing. The creator, you know, he was attached
Overbrook being
to
Will Smith's company,
Will Smith's
by the way.
company. He
Wow.
was so attached to every word of his like 300-page comic graphic novel. And the fact is, look, you're going to be lucky if you get a $5 million film out of this thing.
Right.
So sorry, this isn't Michael Bay. Michael Bay isn't
Right.
writing you a blank check. It's like we're trying to get to the next stage, and unfortunately, the language of Hollywood is formula. It is formula, and so it is crazy when you see these creators stand up in a meeting and disagree with absolutely everything you'd already discussed. It's like, look, if we want to get through this next doorway, this next gatekeeper, and keep this thing alive, we're gonna have to trim some of this down, and we got to go in with a tight idea of what this thing is. And you see that energy just bubble up in them when they have to defend their baby.
Oh my
and they
God.
start pulling everything from the past out. It's like, okay, all right, this did
every bad experience with whatever editor or feedback or what, and you're
just
I get
like
it.
the rest of them.
Just like the rest of them, and you're like, well, I mean, we don't have to pitch it anywhere. Like, you can do whatever you want with this, but if you want me to do it, I do need, and I would walk them through like possibilities where I'm like, okay, I'll give you some ideas of how we can approach a Hopeless Maine adaptation. You can then tweak it from there. Like, it doesn't have to just be exactly what I say. I'll just give you like a beginning or kind of a basic framework. And even that framework doesn't have to be airtight or anything like that. But I mean, they literally just wanted to essentially adapt the comic almost panel for panel. And I'm like, guys, it's not like, we can't. It's like, it's just, I can't take this anywhere if we do that. And they literally, like, they already had their comic book set up somewhere. So we were already a part of that regardless of what happened. But they basically walked from the agency after that. And they were like, fuck you. You don't understand. We thought you understood what we were doing with this.
We've gotten into some great arguments.
Oh,
We've gotten into some great back
I
and forth.
can't even fathom doing that. Like, everyone thinks that like comics are this sort of like stepping stone to like movies and TV, and like, I'm like, that sounds stressful. I just want to sit here like in my little corner and make my little comic and like make a livable wage and call it a day. My bar is very low.
Right. Well, and I think the thing about if anything ever happened with it outside of comics is there are those middlemen that will they'll do it for you. You just have to really be okay with letting it happen. Yeah. Because even like with us, I'm like, look, even if I pitch it and someone like even Dallas, his story about the guy with Overbrook, even if Overbrook had picked it up, they're not going to just take the script as is or the idea as is. They're going to develop the shit out of it, right? And you will not have any real say. Even if they keep you on, they'll say like, "Oh, you'll be a creative consultant." We'll come. Not really. It's like, oh, they will consult you. They just won't listen to anything you say.
Well, it's like you'll get the notes, but
exactly. And if you're really problematical and troublesome with it, they'll even kind of stop consulting you at that point and be like, we'll consult him or her when we have the final, and like, basically be a.
We'll consult them like, oh, do you like the blue shoes or the red one? And like, that's the only choice you get.
Right. Or kind of a take it or leave it. Like, we have a green light. Here's the script. We're doing it regardless, but we want to know what you think anyways, out of courtesy, kind of like, it doesn't matter what you think, but we're asking you anyway. And like, it's that kind of consulting where it's like, you have no power, you have no say, but they will let you know what's happening. And that's kind of it. So anyway, I've been that person to piss the creator off. I get it. I don't want to be that person. I think when it is something like comic books, but even then, like, what company are you taking it to and what's their model, and would they ever do a 70-issue series, kind of a thing if it's Sacrimony? And so
I've been rejected by everybody because of that.
Right.
Like, I've applied to everybody, but I never talk about it because it's like it never goes anywhere. I'm not gonna be like, hey guys, pitching to this comic, like this company, wish me luck. Like, I keep it under wraps. If it doesn't happen, nobody knows.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if something happened, then I would have been like, oh, Sacrimony got picked up by blah blah blah. But like
Smart.
nobody wants a 70-issue series that's done by just one person.
I don't think anyone trusts that it's ever going to get done
Yeah,
when
exactly.
something like that
That's the key.
happens. That's a
I
big
mean,
part of it too.
You guys pay
is-
me and it'll get done. I swear.
Right,
I'll work even
exactly.
faster, but that's how that goes.
Exactly.
But
That's
yeah,
right.
like I get it. I'm not personally offended because I know like they're looking for this very specific thing that they can
Yeah.
actually like Sacrimony itself is also incredibly hard to pitch because there is like so much going on. It like they're like, write a 1-page synopsis. I'm like, how the fuck do I do that?
I will say though, reading Sacrimony, and I'm always in that space in our old transmedia space because that's what we sort of do. We specialize in the idea of transmedia, which is sort of simultaneous proliferation of an IP across media. And for me,
you can tell we've done this. And the moment Dallas goes back into agent mode, I'm like, oh god, I remember those days.
Oh my goodness.
So for me, Sacrimony is that translation is going to be about the relationship between mother and the child, and it's going to be about those individual adventures week to week. It's a series. It would probably exist in a parallel universe with Xena and Hercules in that way, that sense. That's the pitch, and that's the kind of pitch that most people, I think, on the Hollywood side would go, okay, all the accessibles are there, right? It's sort of that YA relationship between two generations, mother and daughter. It's an alternate sort of universe and parallel sort of placement, Middle Earth-esque. There's probably going to be a Lear or Liar, or and there's going to be Mead. There's going to be some Vikings who show up occasionally, maybe.
Right.
So.
But you would need something like today. You would need like that one season that if nothing else happened, that would be
exactly
enough. Kind of a thing where you're like, you get 8 45-minute to 1 hour episodes, and that could be all we ever make. Are you okay? Like, can you tell a story in that? And it could continue. And that is the difference. It's much more gray.
That is the difference between the sort of the ecosystem of Hollywood today versus when we first started.
I think I could do that, but like people would not like the ending.
Well, you get the people not liking the ending kind of leads you into the
Hollywood
possibility of a second season.
That, in case you haven't noticed. It's a lot of shows. I don't know how many shows you watch these days, but like especially if it ends prematurely, like most of the time the ending's pretty disappointing.
You can kind of tell which shows end in a way that they're not sure if they're gonna get another season, so they kind of try to plan like accordingly. Like, okay, this could end here.
It could go either way. Right.
We could go on.
And I will say, as an exercise, because you're a person who's clearly self-motivated and self-taught in terms of the style and medium, maybe trying to figure out a way to tell the story of a television series, first season of a television series, just as an exercise, since you clearly like to add more extra work for yourself.
Oh my god. I mean, probably give me a couple of months to finish some other interior work and whatnot, and then we'll talk. But
all right.
But like I
we'll be around.
I technically could, like, I would have to gut probably like the side character aspects of the story. Like we'd say like, all right, Sifrim got banished, but then he died. Like that's it. He went up to the gates. Those little blue guys killed him. Like it's over. That's it. And then just follow specifically Kajat and Unica around, and like see. And what the key
is to use some of those subsequent characters as the sort of fuel for other adventures that pop in and out for your main two primary characters. That's in terms of the television series, that works very well. And because you have such a dense canon here, you have the possibility to do that.
It would involve like gutting out like some of people's favorite characters though, because like I said, if we're condensing it into like 8 episodes for a season, then I probably I can't show the entire other side with like the B team, because
I think you'd have to.
It would be like it would take too much time. There would be too much explanation.
True, but I love the way your brain is already working. I'm just saying.
I'm very adaptable.
You could introduce the B team in season 2 if you get a season 2, because then you're sort of like, okay, we're golden, we're popular. We think we're gonna go for a little while. You
could lead to the B team in season 2,
right.
Anyway,
but it takes that reimagining of how it all rolls out. Yeah,
I mean, we could technically, if we want to be assholes, right? Like, we could not show them in season 1 at all. We could leave the like, oh, did Sifrim get killed by the
Funny Figs? You are showing up late to the party, but we're still rolling. Welcome.
Late, but you came into a good spot, because this is alternate universe Sacrimony mini series TV series pitch going on here. So yeah, we can leave it open ended as to whether or not like Sifrim died at the gates to those blue people. Like, just leave it there. We can pick that up in season 2 and show the B team going there. Like, it's kind of an asshole thing, because it's like, all right, we're going to rewind back like a couple of months and show what happened with this guy.
Yeah.
And then you pick up, and then the B team's there. They go and they like nuke the old ladies or whatever, and like, we could do that. We
and
could
then the convergence of those in season 3. I'm just saying,
it's kind of how you do the comic already. You
just
like you start one place, then you go back and show us something.
I have a PhD in this at that point. Like, let's do this. Let's make this happen.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. I rarely say this, because I dislike dipping back into our old agency kind of thing, because both Dave and I turn into completely different animals, and it just it starts us back down that sort of path.
Oh my goodness! Is it like where you curl up into a ball and you're just like, no more of this?
No,
like
actually, it's more like yes, this is what we were meant to do, but
not sort of. I mean, it's such it's a switch flip in your head when you go between like the purely creative to the advocating for creators in a very formal way, and that is. It's a different mindset. It's a different.
I can imagine. Like, I can't even fathom. Like, I can't even begin to think about like the way that you have to think about things. Like, not only like in terms of the story, but like you're saying, like what formulas work, like what pitches work, like what would make you just look like utterly bonkers in front of like a boardroom meeting. Like, you don't want to be the bonkers guy, and I get it.
I mean, occasionally you'll push
we kind of are, just because of the nature of what we were doing. We generally come in as the comic book guys. Then we always were the sort of bastard stepchild that everyone really needed, but they really hated that they needed. That was the thing for us. So.
Well, they didn't understand. This was during a period. This was like we started this right around like the first Iron Man movie dropping. So this was like 2008 to about 2015. And we didn't plan it that way. It was just something we're like, we think we can do this. We've got the connections. We got like 20 creators to sign up with us right away. And we're like, let's do it. And it just turned out to be the best timing ever. It was. And we got really far with it. But it was like we were learning on the go and like what the expectations were. And I was coming from the publishing world. So I was learning Hollywood at that time. This was my real like deep dive stepping stone. Now I know what I'm doing and learning the rules and the expectations, but going back to the creators and really baby stepping them through what we were learning sometimes worked and sometimes burned bridges. And it's a hard thing to navigate.
How many times did it work? I'm so curious, because like we always hear the horror stories of like this creator was like completely like possessive and horrible. But I'm glad to hear.
I mean,
because of the visual nature of what we were doing, people, the industry generally treated comic books and graphic novels as storyboards. And one thing about pitches is, when you get to that second pitch, really they want you to show them what world they're going to be making. And because of the visual nature of comic books and graphic novels, really half that work is kind of done. You just need to sort of shape it for them. So, the work of pitching is kind of just done to a certain degree. It's just about your sort of style after a certain point.
As long as we could set up the comic somewhere, like, you needed a publisher on board. You needed it to be something real.
Not self-published from someone's basement.
Then self-published from someone's basement. Kickstarter was kind of coming up in the world right around that time. So right around the time we actually decided to move on and do other things, Kickstarter was kind of taking over everything for the, you know, the creators that needed that kind of help and weren't already established. So it was sort of like, okay, we're burnt out. We're kind of we've been doing this for like 7 years as a it was our full-time job for like 7 years, and like it went really well, but it was a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think even what we're doing now, as much as I'm like, this is a lot, doing the show and our other day jobs and our whatever and promoting and blah blah blah, but nothing compared to what running that agency was. I mean, it was 24/7, and I was just like, I like by the end of it, I was like, I want a day job. I'm like, I want 9 to 5. I want to clock out. I want to fucking read a book and just go home and have downtime. And so that was sort of like before we came back with this show and me getting back involved with the creative community. Those were like my years of like, I'm tuning out everything, and I'm having time to myself for the first time in like half a decade or more.
And I'm still not even re-engaged into the creative community. Like, I'm still
right. I'm still pulling him back in. I'm still him back in.
Like, all right, buddy. All right, you handle that. Anyway, great show, guys. Great show.
Thanks for this. This was fantastic. Thanks for everyone still viewing. Funny Pigs, if you're still around. This is the end, unfortunately, but thanks for joining us for the last 5 to 10 minutes or so here.
Anything else you want to plug or let the people know about their sorcier?
Oh man, I got nothing. My brain is done.
Child Protective Services will be coming up soon. I do believe that she's been working on. I do my best.
Child Possession Services.
Possession. I was like, wait, what?
Oh, sorry. Protection. Right.
It's such a clever title, though.
That's the
really
real thing. That's the real thing. Child
that's the real
Possession.
thing.
Well, we don't know if Child Possession Services is real. We don't know.
This is true. We wouldn't know. It's a bit of a secret branch of the Child Protection Services. But Matta's work on that should be coming up.
John already has the launch page for it up. I know that because he has like 5 different pre-launch pages. So
that's right.
I don't know how they allow him to do that, or like, you know, who he had to.
If you have one of our Discords we're a part of, Pat Shand actually dropped by while we were discussing this and said if you have 5 successful fulfilled Kickstarters under your belt already, they allow you to do multiple pre-launches at once.
No, they gave me shit for Sacrimony 6 because that was like my 7th or 8th campaign, and they were just like, and they were like, oh no, well, we have to wait until this other thing is fulfilled. And I was like, I had to send them like a screenshot, like, it's already halfway fulfilled. Like, give me a break here. Like, I'm working on it, but like,
no,
I had already had the track record.
Launch it. I think it's just the pre-launch.
They didn't want me to have the pre-launch page.
No,
I was like,
not even that.
You guys are assholes.
Yeah. Well, I know Pat Shand had to.
I want to feel like you guys are racist. That's what it is. But no, that's the go-to, isn't it?
It is, but you never know, really. So that is, you know, I will say I know Pat Shand like a year or two ago, like they dinged him for trying to do that, and he's like, hey, this is our business model. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And he had to have some heart-to-hearts with them before they let him. And so they're easing up on it more and more as time goes on. Now John apparently can do it. Pat can do it now.
I'm going to try it. I'm going to make a pre-launch for Buddy and Friend 3 and see what happens.
See what happens. Yeah.
I already have the cover image and stuff. Like, let's see what happens.
Yeah. See, as you keep getting more and more fulfilled, I mean, once you have a track record, apparently it should be easy.
They should.
They should.
I can't believe it's my 11th.
Absolutely.
I don't know how I'm still alive.
Oh, you've done it. That's fantastic.
And you're still awake. Good job. For tonight.
And we're boring as hell. So kudos to you.
We are.
You guys are
especially
great.
when we start talking about the wine. Jesus Christ.
No, I loved it. I loved hearing the analysis. I loved hearing like why you picked it, the whole breakdown. Like that was good. Like you sold me on wine, and I'm not usually a wine person. So I am a mead person. I do like my mead, but the wine.
There you go. I mean, mead's a hop, skip, and a jump. You're getting there. You got to start some dessert wines first. You know,
I have like the refined palate of a literal child when it comes to wine. So I do like some dessert wines. Like I'm not
gotta get
really
the sugar.
Yeah. Which is funny because I usually don't gravitate towards like sugary drinks and stuff at all. But like apparently I need it to make my wine. More palatable.
Yeah. Sugar does make alcohol more palatable because it does help that burn.
Liquid candy.
Exactly. All right, folks. Good night for now. Thanks for joining us tonight. Sacrimony, Kickstarter, sacrimony.com/Kickstarter. Kickstarter.
Yes.
Go
Thank you
check
for
out
having
Matta's
me.
thing
This
if you
was a
haven't
lot
yet.
of fun.
Oh, thanks
This
for
was a
coming.
lot of fun. Thanks so much, Matta. Good night, everybody.
Good
We are
night.
ending